Chapter 342. It was like there would be no reunion and parting. There would be no afterlife in life. That was why Qin Weibai's profile was so clear. It was the last glance before parting. Qin Weibai stood quietly at the door of the villa. Li Tianlan's car had completely disappeared, without a trace. There was a breeze in the sunny Lin En. The breeze blew the water of the West Lake and seemed to blow away all the spiritual qi in her. Qin Weibai's whole body became empty. There was no hope, no longing, no thoughts, no coldness and gentleness. She was like a body that had lost everything. She was still beautiful, but she was shaking with the wind. She still had too much to say. There were still too many things she wanted to do. But she couldn't say or do anything about it. She didn't even give Li Tianlan a serious hug or kiss. She behaved too normally. Only normality could make Li Tianlan believe in their future. But there was no future. Even this parting was so incomplete. Tears flowed down her delicate face and dripped on the ground. After all her emotions collapsed out of control, there was no pain in her heart, only numbness and emptiness, with a touch of indescribable coldness. Her body seemed to be weightless, floating with the wind, empty, getting higher and higher. There was no foundation or tie, no past and no future. Qin Weibai squatted down with her arms around her shoulders and lowered her head. She was silent, like a child who had been wronged. But what she suffered was not grievance, but the most heart-wrenching coldness and despair. The wind stopped. The wind rose again. Qin Weibai squatted at the door, as still as a sculpture. Lin Fengting, who spent all his time in Lin An and didn't say a word about the Li family's comeback, walked over quietly and whispered, "When will you go to Snow Country?" "Today." Qin Weibai was silent for a while and whispered. She was in a mess now, but she was unwilling to stand up. To be exact, she was too lazy to stand up. Since she knew there was no future, why did she care so much? "Shall I go with you?" Lin Fengting asked. "No need." Qin Weibai raised her head and looked into the distance. The villa area was very high. Staying at the door, she could clearly see the turbulent and swaying West Lake outside the villa. Her eyes were a little dazed, but her tone was very serious. She whispered, "Sir, please stay in Jianghu State for a few more days. It's not too late to set off after the final maneuver." Lin Fengting raised his eyebrows in confusion. "Snow Country has nothing to do with the final maneuver, right?" "It has something to do with Tianlan." Qin Weibai choked with sobs and took a deep breath. Her perfect and delicate face was like a pear blossom in the rain. There was a kind of softness in her. "I don't want him to go to Snow Country. After the final maneuver, he probably won't be able to go for a while." She knew very well what resistance Li Tianlan would encounter in the final maneuver. Li Beitian, Su Chu, and Ning Qianqing were all severely injured. Yu Qingyan's realm was still low. Although her lethality was terrifying, it was not suitable for her to play in the final maneuver. Now in the East Emperor Palace, there were only Li Tianlan and Du Hanin, who had barely broken through to the thunder-shocking realm. At most, there was Dongqing Rushi. 3 people. However, the 3 of them would have to face 3 young forces. 3,000 realms, Phantom Realm, and Jilei Peak. Wang Shengxiao, Gu Hanshan, Song Xiai, and Jiang Shangyu. Any one of them was powerful enough to look down on the young generation of Jianghu State. Qin Weibai had always been very confident in Li Tianlan. She did not think that Li Tianlan would lose, but confidence was not blind worship, so she did not think that Li Tianlan would win easily. If Li Tianlan wanted to win the final maneuver, he almost had to rely on his own strength to defeat the strongest of the young generation. The best outcome was that he would be seriously injured. At that time, he naturally could not go to Snow Country. No matter what happened in Snow Country, he was powerless. Lin Fengting also understood what Qin Weibai meant. He was silent for a while, wanting to say something but stopping on second thought. Finally he said, "Have you ever thought that you might have underestimated Tianlan?" "Underestimated?" Qin Weibai turned her head and opened a pair of red and swollen but still bright and dreamy beautiful eyes. "Do you know how strong he is now?" Lin Fengting asked calmly. Qin Weibai was silent. She did not ask about Li Tianlan's current martial arts, and Li Tianlan did not say it. This matter was very important, but it was not the most important thing at the moment. "What do you think, sir?" Qin Weibai asked seriously. Lin Fengting was silent for a moment. He remembered Li Tianlan's performance when he was entangled with Wang Tianzong. In the monstrous sword intent, Li Tianlan directly entered the state of meditation. Lin Fengting could vaguely feel Li Tianlan's progress afterward, but when it happened, he did not feel anything. Nothingness. Li Tianlan in meditation seemed to not exist at all, and his whole person seemed to completely dissipate between heaven and earth. At that time, Tianzong asked Tianlan a question. Lin Fengting said. He asked Tianlan when he recultivated the 4 realms of martial arts. He paused and shook his head in confusion. Li Tianlan did give him a very strange feeling now, but he could not tell it, even though he had seen a few videos of Li Tianlan's moves. Great breakthroughs and great achievements are based on recultivating the 4 realms of martial arts. Tianlan is now in the state after recultivating the 4 realms of martial arts. Don't you know what this means? Lin Fengting asked. Qin Weibai's eyes changed, and her eyes were full of vigor. After recultivating the 4 realms of martial arts, the word recultivation could be completely removed. After the 4 realms of martial arts, there was only the invincible realm. Sir, do you mean that Tianlan is now in the invincible realm? Qin Weibai's eyes were a little happy. The stronger her man was, the happier she would be. Yes and no. Lin Fengting shook his head. He is certainly not in the real invincible realm, but at least he is no longer in the thundershocking realm. Qin Weibai fell silent. Even so, it is unlikely that he can win this maneuver unscathed. Qin Weibai whispered. Lin Fengting's eyes were deep and meaningful. Qin Weibai wanted to face the tribulation for Li Tianlan, so she dragged the entire Samsara palace to destruction. But it was related to the future of the Lin clan, so Lin Fengting had to protect her. In this case, some words did not need to be too clear. Lin Fengting smiled and changed the topic. What happened on Mount Dibbing was your doing, wasn't it? He said it vaguely. But Qin Weibai knew what he was talking about. Yes. Qin Weibai's tone was calm. How do you know summer solstice? Lin Fengting was a little curious. Summer solstice's strength was a secret of the Wang family of Beihai, and even some giants of Zhongzhou state were not very clear about it. When the 4 of them learned swordsmanship together, summer solstice's progress could even be said to be the fastest, but she never fought. The treason case on the border more than 20 years ago was the only time she fought. But that case itself had too many secrets, and Kunlun City could not publicize it, so few people knew the details of summer solstice. In any case, Qin Weibai should not know. Why don't I know? Qin Weibai asked. Lin Fengting fell silent. He was a little embarrassed. In fact, it did not matter why Qin Weibai knew summer solstice's strength. What mattered was whether the Wang family of Beihai knew that the sneak attack on summer solstice was actually the doing of the Samsara Palace. Lin Fengting did not expect this matter to be a secret, because the Samsara Palace hardly concealed it. Summer solstice could be said to be Wang Tianzong's reverse scale. In her current state, if she forced a fight, it would not be good. Wang Tianzong was not the kind of person who would not fight back after suffering a loss. In the upcoming final battle in the Dark World, the Samsara Palace, which had little hope of survival, provoked Wang Tianzong, and the hope of survival was now almost infinitely close to 0. Tianzong will go crazy. You didn't do this secretly. Lin Fengting shook his head, and his tone was a little complicated. I just gave him a chance to go crazy. Qin Weibai stood up and said in a flat tone, at this point, it's time for the Samsara Palace to give up some less important things. I'm waiting for Wang Tianzong's revenge, and even prepared clues for him. Let's see if the intelligence system of the Wang family of Beihai is really so pervasive. Lin Fengting instinctively did not want to talk about this topic. Are you leaving now? Qin Weibai tidied up her messy long hair, shook her head and said, I still have to see 2 people. Lin Fengting took a deep look at her, nodded and said, Take care. He passed by Qin Weibai and walked out. The scenery in Lin'an was charming, especially the West Lake, which was the most memorable. With the establishment of the Supervisory Council, the West Lake scenic spots had recently been guarded by a lot of armed troops. Inevitably, the number of tourists had decreased a lot. The sparsely populated West Lake was a holy land for Lin Fengting, who was unrestrained in his bones. Qin Weibai seemed to have calmed down. She went back to the bedroom and changed her clothes. She was dressed simply in a white shirt and black straight pants. She washed her face in the bathroom. Qin Weibai, who had been empty and desperate and a little weak, suddenly became dreamy and cold again. She called Flaming Fire and asked them to prepare a car, book a plane ticket, and get ready to leave. Saint was still recovering in the small villa at the end of the villa area. Qin Weibai did not intend to see him again. From the very beginning, it was a deal between her and Saint. For her, the meeting in the villa a few days ago should be the last meeting in her life. Saint seemed to be aware of this, so he took off his cloak that day. She went downstairs and walked out of the villa. Before leaving Jianghu State, she still had to see two people. It didn't matter in which order, as long as she saw them. The lawn in front of the villa was green and soft. Qin Weibai stood on the grass and turned around gently. With her back to the West Lake, she stared at the villa that brought her too much happiness and peace of mind. The location of the villa was excellent, but because of the age, it was actually a little old. However, it seemed to be contaminated with too much of Li Tianlan's aura, so every brick and tile was impeccable. Impeccable, the most perfect. There was a kind of faint but full of joy, anger, sorrow and joy, full of lingering love, full of deep love and no regrets. This atmosphere was neither heaven nor hell. It was the human world in the vast secular world. But it was no longer the human world that belonged to her. Why should she miss it? Qin Weibai pressed her red lips tightly. She looked at the villa in front of her again and simply turned around. A flash of red appeared in her line of sight. That red dress was like a swaying flame under the sun. The red was passionate, the red was charming, and the red was dazzling. So gorgeous. But so cold. The red dress, with the hem of the dress fluttering in the wind, walked lightly to Qin Weibai. Chapter 343. Qin Weibai looked at Red Dress who walked up to her. The red dress was bright and eye-catching, making people ignore the breeze, the sun, the lake, and the green trees. The red dress fluttered and became the most vivid color in front of Qin Weibai. Qin Weibai instinctively adjusted her body, took a step back, and made a subtle but clear defensive posture. Her expression was serious. But her eyes, which had just woken up, became dazed again, and there was no focus in them. It seemed to be the same morning. It seemed to be the same sunshine. It seemed to be the same breeze. It seemed to be the same red dress. How familiar this scene was. It was like a sharp knife, piercing directly into her broken heart without any leeway, making her numb and hollow soul experience the deep pain again. The story seemed to have just begun. But Qin Weibai felt that she was standing in the end. She was a little panicked. So she took another step back and looked around in a panic. The villa area was quiet under the sun. The breeze was extremely gentle, and the treetops were swaying in the wind. The sun shone on the West Lake, with charming waves. There was no sky close at hand, and it was impossible to see the whole city from above. There was no blood on the ground, and the grass was green and soft, peaceful. Qin Weibai took a few deep breaths and forced herself to calm down. I cried. I'm fine now, she said. Red Dress looked at Qin Weibai quietly. Her eyes were as clear as water, with a kind of innocence that had never been polluted by any filth. She was wearing a bright red tunic dress and a pair of pure white sneakers. Her fair and straight calves were exposed. Her hair fluttered in the breeze. She was pure and enchanting, like a piece of colorful crystal. She was crystal clear and beautiful, yet so gorgeous. Qin Weibai's eyes stayed on her shoes for a long time. Red Dress seemed to take a small step back in a hurry and whispered, I'm not used to wearing high-heeled shoes. That's good. Qin Weibai smiled. Tianlan just left to find your brother-in-law. Did you come to Lin and by yourself? I came with my sister. Dongqing Rushi, dressed in red, said honestly. Lin and was not far from Huating. Since Zhou Yuanshan was in charge of the Jianghu provincial government, it was much more convenient for Dongqing Chochi and Zhou Yuanshan to get together. After Zhou Yuanshan got familiar with the environment in a few days, Dongqing Chochi naturally came to see her husband. It was just a 2 to 3 hour drive. Dongqing Rushi, who lived with her sister, naturally came to see her fiancé. I'm also your sister. Qin Weibai smiled softly and meaningfully. Her red and swollen eyes were still resplendent, but her expression was extremely gentle. It was a very kind gaze, filled with intimacy, appreciation, and a trace of imperceptible but real guilt. Dongqing Rushi blushed, blinked her eyes, and subconsciously glanced at her wrist. Both of them wore the same exquisite watches on their wrists. She had nothing to do with Qin Weibai. But from Li Tianlan's point of view, Li Tianlan was their man, and they were naturally sisters. Dongqing Rushi gently bit her lower lip, and her bright little face was a little gloomy. No matter how pure her temperament was, she was still a woman, sharing a man with another woman, and she had to call this woman sister. Dongqing Rushi couldn't describe the feeling in her heart, but she just felt a little wronged. "Do you feel very wronged?" Qin Weibai asked softly. "No." Dongqing Rushi shook her head subconsciously, but she was not good at hiding her emotions. She gently pursed her small mouth, and it seemed that she didn't mean what she said. "It's normal to feel wronged." Qin Weibai touched Dongqing Rushi's hair, and her voice became softer. She was 1.76 meters tall barefoot, and she was a little taller than Dongqing Rushi. With a pair of high heels, her movement was very natural. "Even if I were you, I would also feel wronged. At least for now, it seems that you are indeed more suitable for Tianlan than me. If I were you, maybe I would have already made a scene." Dongqing Rushi lowered her head and looked at her toes. She whispered, "I don't dare. If I make a scene, Tianlan will definitely not want me. If Tianlan doesn't want me, my family will not want me either." Her words were very soft and tender. Qin Weibai, who knew something about the past, felt sad in her heart. How could they bear to do that? Qin Weibai smiled and took Dongqing Rushi's hand. "You are the most suitable girl for Tianlan. No one else. Tianlan will definitely not abandon you." "Really?" Dongqing Rushi raised her head and looked at Qin Weibai with clear eyes. She was a little happy. "Of course it's true." Qin Weibai nodded. The kindness in her eyes was not hidden, but there was still a trace of pity and sadness. If she didn't exist, who? Dongqing Rushi asked subconsciously. She asked it very naturally, but when she said the single syllable, there was a stiffness that she didn't even notice. The breeze was still soft. Dongqing Rushi, whose hand was held by Qin Weibai, gradually changed. The clarity in her eyes gradually changed, and a strange look became stronger and stronger. Qin Weibai let go of Dongqing Rushi's hand in silence. The kindness in her eyes gradually disappeared, and she became cold. "Of course it's another you. I don't think there's anything wrong with my existence." The clarity in Dongqing Rushi's eyes disappeared completely, and she became extremely cold and vigilant almost instantly. Qin Weibai looked indifferently at Dongqing Yueshan, who had quietly replaced Dongqing Rushi's personality. There was a trace of disgust in her eyes that she couldn't hide. It was disgust, not hatred. "You should disappear," she said coldly. "If you don't show up, the Dongqing clan will be much more at ease." "Ridiculous." Dongqing Yueshan sneered. "My existence is not a secret in the Dongqing clan. My sister, my parents, my grandfather, and my godfather all know about it. They all love me very much. What qualifications do you have to stand in the Dongqing clan's position to judge me? You are neither human nor ghost." Qin Weibai's voice was as cold as the chilly wind blowing out of the polar glacier, without any temperature. Her smile was as cold as a knife and sharp. "You have the face to say that they love you very much? Don't you feel ashamed?" Her words were extremely harsh. But Dongqing Yueshan wasn't angry. She just frowned and wondered, "Why should I feel ashamed?" This rhetorical question was natural. Qin Weibai was stunned on the spot. She was silent for a long time, then sighed softly and said self-mockingly, "You really have nothing to feel ashamed of now." Dongqing Yueshan became more and more inexplicable. She looked at Qin Weibai, with undisguised defensiveness in her eyes. Just like Qin Weibai didn't like her. She didn't like Qin Weibai either. This woman was recognized as a goddess in the dark world. She was superior, perfect, otherworldly, and extremely beautiful. But when Dongqing Rushi saw her for the first time in Heaven Capital, she didn't like her. She always felt that this woman was too demonic. Under the sacred, all was demonic aura. Dongqing Yueshan didn't want to admit that this dislike was fear, but she instinctively didn't want to see Qin Weibai. But what Qin Weibai said to Dongqing Rushi was too obvious. If she didn't show up, she really wasn't sure what Qin Weibai would say. So now it was not so much that Dongqing Yueshan took the initiative to show up, but that Qin Weibai took the initiative to lead her out. What do you want? Dongqing Yueshan asked cautiously. Do you remember our meeting in Heaven Capital? Qin Weibai said calmly. I asked you a question at that time. In the past 100 years in Zhongzhou State, which family is the saddest and most pitiful? Dongqing Yueshan stared at Qin Weibai and said nothing. Qin Weibai did ask this question. But Qin Weibai also gave the answer at that time. She didn't say the Li family, but the Dongqing clan. Dongqing Yueshan didn't agree with this view. Not the Li family. And not the Dongqing clan. She looked at Qin Weibai and said firmly, word by word. I really don't know where your confidence comes from. Qin Weibai sneered and said, if some people are trustworthy, how can we have all this today? From your point of view, if you trust the wrong person, you are doomed to a tragedy. I'm right. Dongqing Yueshan's tone was firm and stubborn. Qin Weibai took a deep look at her. You can believe in your own judgment, provided that you are mentally prepared to pay the price. Dongqing Yueshan's face changed, and she said nothing. Tell me, if you fall in love with a man you have to kill, what will happen? Qin Weibai suddenly asked. She asked suddenly. Dongqing Yueshan's face changed dramatically. I don't know what you are talking about. She forced herself to be calm. Qin Weibai looked at Dongqing Yueshan quietly, and a smile gradually appeared at the corner of her mouth. Her eyes were in a trance, and her thoughts completely drifted elsewhere. They are all pitiful people, she said softly, and her sharp eyes softened. Have you ever imagined yourself as a bird? A bird with wings that can fly freely, flying higher than an eagle. Qin Weibai asked softly. Dongqing Yueshan only thought that she was crazy. She shook her head and said, no. I have imagined it, but I can't. Qin Weibai said softly, but there is a woman who has always thought so. She used to be a genius of an era, but in the end, she cooperated with others and killed her beloved man. Do you want to know what happened to her in the end? What happened? Dongqing Yueshan asked subconsciously. She was crazy. Qin Weibai laughed and said, she was really crazy. Back then, she thought that she was a bird that could fly freely in front of me. So she laughed and jumped from the highest place in Huiting. She fell to pieces and her family fell into dire straits because of that. The important members of her family were either sentenced to death or sent to prison. None of them had a good ending. Qin Weibai said softly, as if she remembered that summer again. That summer in Huiting, that woman was also wearing a scarlet dress and a pair of red high heels. In the bright and illusory sunshine, she smiled foolishly and imagined that she had become a bird, opened the wings she thought she had, and jumped from the highest place in Huiting. She was a crazy red dress. She was a bird with broken wings. Her figure passed through the white clouds and fell from the sky with a fierce wind, and finally dyed a large area of green grass red. After the sunshine in Huiting that day, there was a heavy rain. The heavy rain passed through the quiet years in the depths of memory, gradually turning red and sticky, like the last messy loneliness of a bloody storm. All the grudges and grievances had their final ending in that rain of blood. Qin Weibai smiled, looked at the expressionless Dongqing Yueshan in front of her, and said softly, coincidentally, that completely crazy woman has a name similar to yours. Chapter 344. Li Honghe was making tea. The two villas under Qin Weibai's name were next to each other. Through the white railing, Qin Weibai clearly saw the old man making tea in the courtyard of another villa. The wind was gentle and the sun was shining. The old man's movements were unhurried and leisurely. Seeing Qin Weibai coming over, Li Honghe looked up with a smile and said, sit down. You're in a good mood. Qin Weibai sat down and said in a flat tone. She didn't call Senior Li, who seemed to be very respectful. In the absence of others, Qin Weibai didn't bother to disguise her emotions. I'm old. I told you last time we met that I have nothing to think about in this life. My only obsession is to see Tianlan bring the Li family back to its original height. Li Honghe smiled and poured a cup of tea for Qin Weibai. West Lake Longjing was world famous, but the old man made black tea from Jiangnan. The tea was mellow and had a long aftertaste. He put the tea in front of Qin Weibai, narrowed his eyes and continued, but now it seems that you still don't believe me. Should I believe you? Qin Weibai asked. This was not the first time they met. More than 4 years ago, when Li Tianlan re-practiced martial arts for the first time in the desert prison, Qin Weibai and Li Honghe met for the first time. Qin Weibai had never concealed her doubts about Li Honghe. But she got all of Li Honghe's trust. Whether you believe it or not, I mean it. Li Honghe looked at Qin Weibai calmly. Qin Weibai looked down at the cup of black tea handed over by the old man. She gently touched the edge of the cup with her fingers. After a long time, she suddenly asked, "Is there enough manpower in the Li family?" "The Overwatch Council has enough manpower," Li Honghe said calmly. "It's not a powerful agency in the southeast. It doesn't make sense to put too many people here." Qin Weibai looked up at Li Honghe as if she wanted to see through his heart. On the surface, the Southeast Supervisory Council was indeed meaningless. Most of the southeast was the territory of the Wang family of Beihai. A few areas like Huiting were also a mix of crooks and honest people. Those who dared to establish themselves there all had quite a strong background. The power and function of the special warfare system were originally very vague. The Supervisory Council had the function of supervision. But at present, unless an institution blatantly committed treason, the Supervisory Council had no business at all. But it was an organization that could be at the same level as the Special Warfare Department. Li Honghe's position was more meaningful to provide the Li family with a place to survive. The Li family, which had only a dozen people left, was all stuffed into the Overwatch Council. At least, it was equal to having a veritable official identity. It was also equal to Jianghu State's recognition of the Li family's status again after many years of treason. With this identity, no matter how much the Wang family of Beihai and Kunlun City hated the Li family, they could only hold it in. If they took the risk to take action, once clues were exposed and used by people with ulterior motives, it might form another case of treason, and the evidence would be more conclusive than the case of treason many years ago. Therefore, in a short time, in the absence of absolute certainty and entanglement of great interests, the Li family would be extremely safe in Lin, and with the brand of the Overwatch Council. But it was only limited to safety. It was also very difficult to expand. And this was under the situation that the Li family got the survival soil after Sai City gave up a murderous weapon in 2 provinces in the northeast. Wu Zhengmin was transferred from Xianxia. But all this was only on the surface. No matter how down and out the Li family was, Li Honghe was still there. Although Wu Zhengmin was transferred, he went further into the decision-making committee and became the lowest-ranking deputy prime minister in the cabinet. Zhang Qi, the minister of special warfare in the southeast, also hid very well. This was only known by Qin Weibai. God knew how many cards Li Honghe had hidden in his hands. This unfathomable old man, guarding in the southeast, held an agency that seemed to have no real power, but had too many chess pieces that could be used in the dark. He said he had no thoughts. Who dared to believe it? At least Qin Weibai did not dare to believe it. Everything in the future depends on Tianlan. Li Honghe whispered. The road has been paved. Although this starting point is not perfect, it is much better than expected. At least as long as I am alive, he will not have any worries. But the situation is not good. Qin Weibai's tone was indifferent. In all fairness, today's Li family was already good. At least it had become Li Tianlan's help. Xianxia, which was likely to become the foundation of the Li family in the future, and Jianghu State's deputy prime minister, who was old but strong, was not weak. In any group, it would be an important or even a core component. But the key was that the Li family was not in any group, and the Li family's opponent was not an individual, but a group. It was a behemoth like the Southeast Group and the Special Warfare Group. In comparison, the help around Li Tianlan suddenly seemed extremely loose. One was the declining Li family, and the other was Sai City, which had just risen for a few decades but lost its murderous weapon. As for the giant group, Li Tianlan didn't get the support of the giant group so much as the support of the 3 pillars of rich and powerful families. Dongqing City, the Bai family, and the Zhou family. The combined forces were indeed powerful, but it was still a different concept from the support of the giant group. It's really not good. Li Honghe nodded. So if you have extra men, you don't have to monitor me. It's better to put them in more useful places. Qin Weibai's slender and delicate fingers gently tapped on the edge of the cup. The sound of fingernails gently touching the teacup was extremely empty, calm, but unusually distant. Qin Weibai's voice sounded in the tapping. How much can you grasp about the purgatory of heaven capital? The Li family had been away from the dark world for many years. But this problem could still become the most sensitive one in the dark world. Li Honghe. Grasping the purgatory of heaven capital. Li Honghe did not seem surprised by this question. He was silent for a while, and then said indifferently, "Which aspect do you mean?" There were only two main reasons why the Purgatory of Heaven capital could become the top superpower in the Dark World in just 3 years, and its momentum surpassed that of the Samsara Palace. First, it was a decisive expert who could almost override the entire Dark World. It was deity who had fought with Wang Tianzong more than once without suffering much loss. Second, it was the pillar experts and elite troops of the Purgatory of Heaven capital. Sun Luo, life-prolonging, immortality. When the 3 palaces of the Purgatory of Heaven capital were famous in the Dark World, people found that the experts of the Purgatory of Heaven capital were far more than Daybreak, Dawn, and Phoenix. There were also a large number of silent experts and real battle-hardened elites. Top experts, steady pillars, and battle-hardened elites formed the most stable structure of the Purgatory of Heaven capital. They had no shortcomings because they were backed by East Island, so they could become a real superpower in the shortest time. All aspects. Qin Weibai said indifferently. This time, Li Honghe was silent for a longer time, and then he said slowly, "I don't know." Qin Weibai could hear that it was the truth. But because it was the truth, she felt a little sharp and angry. "You don't know?" She raised her eyebrows. "Don't worry." Li Honghe smiled. Everyone has witnessed Tianlan's performance over the years. The Li family all approves of him. But not everyone approves of him. Qin Weibai's tone was cold. "It's enough that most people approve of him." Li Honghe's tone was indifferent. "As long as he's strong enough, he can get everything. I've prepared everything that needs to be prepared." "You've prepared what I'm not prepared for." He looked at Qin Weibai with undisguised appreciation in his eyes. "I didn't expect that the silence of the master of Samsara Palace would have such a big impact in the final battle of Heaven capital 3 years ago. After the border war, Tiannan appeared, and the Purgatory of Heaven capital entered Tiannan. Is it your doing? Is this our tacit understanding?" "I'm just doing what I should do." Qin Weibai's voice was indifferent. "Tianlan will become stronger, the strongest. I've never doubted that. But he needs time to grow," Li Honghe said in a low voice. His tone was very heavy. Because everyone knew what Li Tianlan would be like when he grew up. He knew. The Wang family of Beihai and Kunlun City would also know. The Li family just wanted a soil for survival, and it directly shook the situation in the northeast and southeast of Jianghu state. Even with the support of the giant group, it still paid a high price. This was just a soil for survival. So what kind of price did the Li family have to pay to make Li Tianlan grow up? "I'll give him time," Qin Weibai said softly, "but after he gets time, what else will he get?" The sound of fingers tapping on the edge of the cup was still ringing. Calm and collected. The subtle sound seemed to synchronize with the breeze, becoming softer and more soothing. A butterfly flew over the marble coffee table. The butterfly's wings fluttered and finally landed beside the teapot. "He can get everything as long as he has time." Li Honghe took a deep breath and said in a low voice. "Everything." Qin Weibai laughed. "I can't believe you," she said. "And even if he gets it, there are 2 kinds. One is temporary possession, and the other is real possession. Tianlan can get everything, but your existence may take everything away. I have a hunch that you may live longer than everyone thinks. Wang Tianzong slashed you with his sword and made you fall into the invincible realm. It may be for a reason. Seniorly, you just said that most people in the Li family will recognize Tianlan." Her voice paused. The butterfly in front of the table flew up, but it danced in the sight of the two. Qin Weibai's voice was ethereal, vaguely seeming to synchronize with heaven and earth. It sounded with the vibration of the butterfly's wings, occupying all of people's consciousness. "So, do you recognize Tianlan?" The butterfly danced softly. The wind seemed to be getting stronger. The sky was rising, and the temperature was rising. The sunlight gradually faded, and the air became dark. The coffee table in front of the two remained unchanged, but the grass around them began to wriggle wildly. The grass was rising wildly and completely out of control. Wildflowers appeared in the grass and bloomed rapidly. One by one, the The trees grew bigger and taller in the grass at a speed visible to the naked eye. The air became sultry and thick. The villa disappeared. A dense primitive forest suddenly appeared around the two of them. The sunlight disappeared completely. In the darkness, the table and chairs in front of the two seemed to disappear, and the marble table turned into a stone tablet. Two bright red characters were carved on the stone tablet. Jianghu State. The butterfly was dancing. The wind was getting stronger. The thick and sultry air was flowing in the wind. The sultry air gradually became cool, and then it turned into bitter cold. It began to snow high up in the sky. The snow covered the treetops and fell to the ground. Of course, I recognized Tianlon. Li Honghe's voice became a little slow, but it was still clear. Really? Qin Weibai's voice was like the sound of nature, filling every corner of the forest, grand and clear, like the voice of a fairy. Yes. Li Honghe's voice became more and more slow. He didn't seem to think there was anything wrong with the forest that shouldn't have appeared. It was still snowing in the sky. The snow was getting heavier and heavier, and the snow kept rising, burying the boundary monument of Jianghu State for a moment. Countless trees gathered together, rising and rising again. The landscape was undergoing earth-shaking changes. The snowflakes were getting bigger and bigger. Qin Weibai also didn't think there was anything wrong with the snow that shouldn't have appeared. Her voice still rang through the whole world unhurriedly. If Li Guangtu didn't die, between him and Tianlon, what would you choose? Li Honghe's voice sounded a little dull, but it was extremely true and frank. I don't know. What about you? He suddenly countered with a question. The snowflakes all over the sky fell down like crazy. Countless trees were still rising, still gathering. The forest had disappeared. So the rising and gathering trees turned into mountains. The mountain was covered with snow, covering the entire mountain and plains. Of course I choose Tianlon. Qin Weibai's voice was gentle and sentimental, almost like a whisper. Really? Li Honghe's dull voice gradually became smooth. Why are you so good to him? He looked at Qin Weibai. Who the hell are you? I am. Boom! Qin Weibai seemed to have said the answer, but Li Honghe couldn't hear it clearly. The whole world completely collapsed in an instant. The falling snow, the collapsed snow-capped mountains, and the messy sky completely disappeared in an instant. Li Honghe gave a muffled groan. The world returned to its original state. There was still a tea table in front of them. It was still windy and sunny, and the fragrance of tea was spreading. The butterfly was still there. But it became two. One stopped in front of Qin Weibai. The other fell on Li Honghe's hand. Li Honghe looked at Qin Weibai. His eyes were a little strange. The expression on Qin Weibai's perfect face changed, and she stared at the butterfly in Li Honghe's hand. You want to hypnotize me? Qin Weibai's voice was extremely cold. You want to hypnotize me? Li Honghe said softly. Qin Weibai was silent. In the spiritual field, both of them were masters. She understood what was going on in an instant. At the beginning, the primeval forest and the boundary marker of Jianghu State were all normal. Because that was the world deep in Li Honghe's heart. It was the border. But there shouldn't be snow at the border. The moment the snow appeared was the beginning of Li Honghe's counterattack. The vast snow and the snow-capped mountains were Qin Weibai's inner world. The only world. Qin Weibai recognized Li Honghe's inner world. That was the real border of Jianghu State. Li Honghe also recognized Qin Weibai's inner world. That was the real Kunlun of Jianghu State. The snow and the mountain could almost be regarded as the hub of the special warfare system of Jianghu State. That was the Qingyun Snow Peak of Kunlun. Under the Qingyun Snow Peak. It was Kunlun City of Jianghu State. The two worlds changed so naturally that Qin Weibai, who wanted to hypnotize Li Honghe, didn't notice it. Instead of getting the truth she wanted, she almost fell into Li Honghe's trap. The confrontation in the spiritual field was even more thrilling than the fight between martial arts, because it was almost an interrogation of the soul. Li Honghe fell from the invincible realm, and his willpower was unstable. Qin Weibai was also in a trance in the face of the parting that would never be together again. Qin Weibai took a deep breath and calmed down again. She might have said something just now, but she believed that Li Honghe couldn't hear it. I didn't expect you to have such a strong sense of self-protection. Li Honghe smiled and said, "Similarly, I didn't expect you to know this method of hypnosis." He looked at Qin Weibai and said, "The field of hypnosis is broad and profound. Different techniques have different effects. This technique is improved by me, and it can even be said to be my own creation." Li Honghe touched the butterfly on his hand and said, "I can be sure that there is only one person who knows this technique except me, but that person is not you." His smile was a little complicated and confused. "So can you tell me who taught you this technique?" Qin Weibai glanced at Li Honghe coldly and said nothing. "Hey, sister, Grandpa Li, are you drinking tea here? It's windy." A voice suddenly sounded. Lin Yuxian appeared in front of the two with a bright smile. "What are you talking about?" "Nothing." Li Honghe smiled and said, "Watching the butterfly." He raised his hand. The butterfly flew up and flew past Lin Yuxian's eyes. "What butterfly? Where is it?" Lin Yuxian looked confused. "Let's go." Qin Weibai suddenly stood up. She took a deep look at Li Honghe and said calmly, "I don't know if I should believe you or not. My distrust of you all comes from that cemetery. I know what you have done." Lin Yuxian was there, so what she said was not completely clear. Li Honghe condensed the death energy formed by nearly 1,000 dead people of the Li family into a huge destiny, which almost doomed Li Tianlan's destiny of death. How could Qin Weibai believe Li Honghe? A light flashed in Li Honghe's eyes, and he smiled bitterly. "I understand. But I have no choice. If I had a choice, I wouldn't do that." He sighed softly, looked at Qin Weibai, and said softly but sincerely, "I also know what you and Wu Wei have done. Thank you. I'm leaving." Qin Weibai shook her head. Li Honghe stood up behind her and bowed deeply to the young woman who was nominally his granddaughter-in-law. "Thank you." Lin Yuxian was startled. Qin Weibai did not look back. Li Honghe looked at her back with a calm expression. He knew what Qin Weibai had done, so he naturally knew what kind of consequences she had to bear. This woman, who had only a vast expanse of snow in her heart, was going to face the tribulation for Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan thought that it was just a farewell. But Li Honghe knew it clearly. There would be no future for her to leave this time. No matter what happened in the future, her perfect figure would no longer be seen in the final sky of Li Tianlan and the Li family. Qin Weibai gently turned around and walked out of the villa. The brilliance of the whole early summer seemed to wither like winter as she turned around. Chapter 345. It was Zhou Yuanshan who asked Li Tianlan to meet, but the meeting place was the first building of the Jianghu Council compound. This was Wu Zhengmin's residence. Wu Zhengmin's entry into the cabinet was a foregone conclusion. The Ministry of Organizing Work of Jianghu State had issued a document a few days ago, and the whole of Jianghu was shaken violently. Recently, the council compound of Jianghu was extremely lively. Various departments at the provincial level and the prefecture level leaders below them came in an endless stream. Wu Zhengmin had been running Jianghu for more than 20 years, and he had been the top leader for nearly 20 years. His deep foundation was completely revealed when he was about to leave office. Every car going in and out of the council compound was enough to show the old man's almost superb control of Jianghu. The southeast of Jianghu State was very lively this year. The most lively place was Xianxia. Lively but not chaotic. Wu Zhengmin's departure from Jianghu would naturally have a huge impact, but his departure was not unacceptable. He entered the decision-making committee and was the real deputy prime minister of Jianghu State, not a nominal title. In the cabinet, he was in charge of business, finance, market economy, quality inspection, customs, tourism, and other work of Jianghu State. Although he ranked last, the real power in his hands was not fake. This was undoubtedly the result of the secret support of the giant group and Li Honghe. At the same time, it was announced to the whole of Jianghu that Wu Zhengmin did not lose power after leaving Jianghu. Such a move would not completely stabilize people's hearts, but at least it would not make the whole officialdom of Jianghu panic. This was the first step to stabilize Jianghu, and it was a crucial step. Only when Wu Zhengmin was still in power could all the subsequent actions of the Li family be meaningful. It was just after 9 o'clock in the morning when Li Tianlan arrived at the council compound on Fu Road, Lin and Province. Wu Zhengmin's secretary stood at the door to greet him. The secretary had the same surname as Li Tianlan, and his first name was Tong. He was ordinary, introverted and reserved. He reached out to stop Li Tianlan's car, opened the door of the passenger seat, and sat down. He said with a smile, "Your Highness, I'm Li Tong. The secretary and the governor are walking in the yard, and they asked me to pick you up." Li Tianlan nodded with a smile, his eyes peaceful. As the secretary of the top leader of Xianxia, Li Tong's information was naturally among them. However, compared with the 13 directors of Jianghu, Li Tong's information was a lot more vague. The Wang family of Beihai and Kunlun City joined hands to attack Li Honghe. After that, a series of rapid and hasty changes occurred. No one else was prepared, not even the Li family itself. It was completely unrealistic for Li Tianlan to integrate into the high-level circle of Jianghu in just a few days. Today, he bit the bullet and came here, which seemed to be pushing a duck to the perch. Under the circumstances that he had not even met Wu Zhengmin, it was naturally difficult for him to understand what kind of person Li Tong was. The black Audi slowly drove to the gate of the councillor's compound. At the same time, an Audi with a Yong City license plate slowly drove out. The two cars brushed past each other. Li Tianlan glanced at it. It was the number 1 bus from Yong City. "It's Secretary Ji's car," Li Tong reminded softly. He looked out the window at the departing Audi with undisguised envy in his eyes. "Secretary Jianghu of Yong City," Li Tianlan said with a smile. In the information he studied, the Deputy Secretary of Jianghu, Jianghu of Yong City, could be said to be the most important, so he could understand the envy in Li Tong's eyes. Because Jianghu could be regarded as Li Tong's predecessor and the first secretary of Wu Zhengmin, he could be said to be the most trusted confidant. Wu Zhengmin strongly recommended Jianghu to the high-level leaders to be the top leader of Yong City. At the same time, in order to check and balance Wang Jingxin of Lin En, he pushed him to the position of deputy secretary. In today's Jianghu, Jianghu seemed to be a vassal, but in fact, he was the real third leader of the whole Jianghu. The information given by Qin Weibai and Li Honghe clearly pointed out that when Wu Zhengmin left Jianghu, as long as Jianghu was kept, Zhou Yuanshan was almost invincible in the competition with Wang Jingxin. Li Tianlan drove thoughtfully. The car passed by the first building of the director's compound and came to the chessboard mountain in the director's compound. The trees on the chessboard mountain were green, but they did not give people a sense of lush vitality. Instead, they looked a little desolate in the green. There was a chessboard temple on the chessboard. Li Tianlan drove west along the mountain road and finally saw 2 men standing side by side in front of an old mountain wall. Wu Zhengmin, whose hair was a little gray and had not had time to dye it black, was saying something. Zhou Yuanshan, the new governor who came to Jianghu from Zhongyuan, stood in front of Wu Zhengmin, high-spirited and in high spirits. The mountain wall behind them was engraved with a whole volume of Amitabha Sutra, and the handwriting was ancient and clear. Li Tianlan looked at this picture quietly. Even though he was a very slow guy in all aspects, when he looked at the 2 men in his sight at this time, he could clearly feel the extremely heavy and solemn atmosphere full of power. He took a deep breath, opened the door, got out of the car, and walked over. Zhou Yuanshan saw Li Tianlan and waved his hand with a smile. This was the second time they met. But different from the approachable brother-in-law in the director's compound of Huiting for the first time, Zhou Yuanshan now was steady and strong, and his every move was dignified. The only thing that remained unchanged was that his eyes were still kind when looking at Li Tianlan. He shook hands with Li Tianlan, and then introduced with a chuckle, "Tianlan, this is Secretary Wu." Li Tianlan did not reach out to Wu Zhengmin. He came to him, bent down very seriously, and bowed to call him Grandpa Wu. Wu Zhengmin was an old friend of Li Honghe. In any case, he deserved to be called Grandpa Wu. This was the talent that Li Honghe valued the most in those days, and his performance did not let anyone down. In the more than 20 years after the collapse of the Li family, facing the covetous eyes of the Wang family of Beihai and the open and covert attacks of other groups, he always stayed in Jianghu and guarded the last and most important foundation for the Li family. Not only did he stand firm, but he was even able to promote his first secretary to the position of the third leader. Every storm in Jianghu over the past 20 years could fully show Wu Zhengmin's unfathomable political wisdom. If the Li family was still in its peak state, with Wu Zhengmin's ability, how could he stay in Jianghu? It was even possible for him to become the cabinet. Wisdom means courage and loyalty. Wu Zhengmin could hardly find any flaws. This was a real strong man. He waited for the current situation with more than 20 years of silence and persistence, and finally won everyone's respect. Such silence was even more powerful than the desperate roars of too many people. Why are you so polite? Wu Zhengmin smiled and helped Li Tianlan. His eyes were a little emotional. Looking at Li Tianlan's young face, he whispered, "Today's situation is not easy, and it will depend on you in the future." "Don't worry, Grandpa Wu." Li Tianlan's voice was very light, but there was no guilt in it, only firmness. In this situation, Xianxia can only be temporarily handed over to Yuan Shan. Wu Zhengmin sighed and said, "Today I called you here for no other reason. I just want to express an attitude to the outside world. Even if I leave Xianxia, the Li family has a successor, and there is a good enough team for the giant group to build their next generation with you as the core. Only in this way can these people in Xianxia continue to maintain confidence and hope. If you have nothing to do in the afternoon, you and Yuan Shan can accompany me for a walk. I guess I have to see a lot of people." "Okay." Li Tianlan nodded, as calm as water. "Kong has just been here. He has made it clear that he will support Yuan Shan's work. If I leave Xianxia, as long as Kong is still there won't be a big problem within 3 years. Tianlan, time is very tight. The next 3 years are very important for you, for me, for Yuan Shan, and for the entire Li family. And all of this depends on your performance in the next 3 years." Wu Zhengmin looked at Li Tianlan with gentle eyes. "Are you confident?" Li Tianlan nodded in silence. He understood what Wu Zhengmin meant. 3 years later, there would be a major change of government in Zhongzhou state once in a decade. At that time, if there was no accident, Wu Zhengmin would definitely retire. After all, he was too old. Once Wu Zhengmin retired, the situation in Jianghu would be unpredictable. At that time, whether Governor Zhou Yuanshan of Jianghu could take the position or not would be the key. If Zhou Yuanshan could not stay in Jianghu, the Li family was bound to be in turmoil again. Even if Zhou Yuanshan could get a position not inferior to that in Jianghu, the Wang family of Beihai that regained control of Jianghu would not let the Li family have a good life. If Zhou Yuanshan was forced to leave, it would even affect the layout of the giant group. This was a real move in one hair and the whole body would be affected. It was difficult for the Li family to make any real big moves in Jianghu within 3 years. Therefore, everything was on Li Tianlan. 3 years later, it was the time to really test the Li family's survival. What Li Tianlan could do could even directly determine the final result of the Li family. And what he had to do was not only to ensure that his martial arts advanced by leaps and bounds, but also to make his power expand rapidly. At least, he had to ensure that Zhou Yuanshan could take the position in Jianghu. This was the bottom line and the biggest goal. "Don't worry, Grandpa Wu." Li Tianlan took a deep breath. His tone was not excited. "Next, everything depends on me." Wu Zhengmin nodded and said meaningfully, "When a pawn crosses the river, there is no way back. It can only move forward. Everyone is a pawn." Zhou Yuanshan whispered. The general trend was like a chessboard. Every time there was a turbulence on the chessboard, there were dense black and white interlacing, just like Go. But when it came to the Li family, the general trend of the Li family was also a chessboard. But because they had too few pawns, each pawn must have a more distinct role. It was like chess. Wu Zhengmin crossed the river from Jiangzhou to Yuzhou. Zhou Yuanshan crossed the river from Zhongyuan to Jiangzhou. Li Tianlan also crossed the river from Jiangzhou. They were all pawns crossing the river. There was no retreat. On the chessboard mountain, in front of the chessboard temple, the 3 of them stood quietly, like 3 pawns on the chessboard who crossed the river first. Chapter 346. In the afternoon and night, Wu Zhengmin took Li Tianlan to meet a lot of people. Jiangzhou was very big, but in the past many years, the power structure was extremely simple, especially in the years when the Li family was destroyed. No matter how Wu Zhengmin insisted, at least in the overall situation, he was the backbone of the Southeast Group. After the end of the Yuzhou conference, Wu Zhengmin, who had entered the cabinet, officially left the Southeast Group and became Li Honghe's subordinate again. Naturally, he was unwilling to let go of the team he had cultivated in Jiangzhou for many years. He must do his best to leave these team members to the Li family. Wu Zhengmin was upright and had sharp eyes. In more than 20 years, the team he had built in Xianxia was absolutely full of talents. In his own words, few people would care about an old guy like him who was too old to be active for a long time. But these people who had been promoted by him over the years were the real wealth. Because of this, today's meeting happened. Wu Zhengmin, who was deeply rooted in Jianghu, Zhou Yuanshan, who was the first among the young generation of the giant group to reach a high position, and Li Tianlan, the heir of the Li family. The three of them stood together. The relationship between them was subtle and meaningful. The powerful figures of Jianghu who saw the three of them also had mixed feelings. Most of the day had passed. Li Tianlan didn't know how many people he had met, but he clearly remembered their attitudes. Among the 13 directors of Jianghu, except for Zhou Yuanshan himself, Wang Jingxin, and Su Xinghe who had not yet arrived in Jianghu, 6 directors clearly expressed their support for Zhou Yuanshan, and 2 expressed a certain degree of support. In addition, the attitude of the main people in charge of the cities under Jianghu was also relatively optimistic. It might take time to test the specific situation, but at least for now, no one clearly opposed Zhou Yuanshan taking over the team left by Wu Zhengmin. Today's trip was already worthwhile for him to get this result. When Wu Zhengmin left and Su Xinghe took office, the real struggle between the dragon and the tiger had just begun. Li Tianlan had dinner in the number 2 building of the director's compound, and then drove back to the villa area by West Lake. The lights were still on in Qin Weibai's 2 villas, but Flaming Fire and Qin Weibai had left. In the afternoon, when Wu Zhengmin took him to visit a senior deputy governor of Jianghu, Qin Weibai sent him a text message. It was a simple message with only 3 words. "I'm leaving." Li Tianlan didn't reply at that time. At this time, he took out his mobile phone and glanced at it again. He suddenly felt a burst of melancholy. Li Honghe was drinking tea in the living room. Lin Fengting, who had been elusive in recent days, sat in front of Li Honghe and talked about some interesting things inside the Lin clan with a smile. Li Tianlan's heart was empty, with some disappointment that he himself was not aware of. "You're back." Li Honghe glanced at him with gentle eyes. "How are you today?" "It's all right." Li Tianlan sat on the sofa and poured himself a cup of tea. After Elder Wu leaves, the situation in Jianghu will not change much. It is unlikely to get better, but it will not get worse either. It will be a fierce battle. The real winner will be outside of Jianghu in 3 years. Lin Fengting smiled and pointed out the current situation with one prick. He didn't care about the affairs of the world, but it didn't mean that he was a fool. Since he had decided to help the Li family, he must pay attention to the current situation of Zhongzhou State. Lin Fengting could see the current situation clearly. In the general election 3 years later, how strong the Li family can be will directly determine the situation in Jianghu. At present, it is the bottom line to let Zhou Yuanshan take advantage of the situation and serve as the top leader of Jianghu in 3 years. If he can't achieve this goal, the Li family will be in danger. If he is forced to leave Jianghu, after Wu Zhengmin retires, all the forces he has cultivated over the years will undoubtedly fall to the Wang family of Beihai. At that time, the Li family will have nothing, and Zhou Yuanshan, who has bet on his political future, will completely lose the qualification to compete with Wang Jingxin. The giant group will also rebound because of Zhou Yuanshan's failure. The 3 pillars of the wealthy will be forced by the internal pressure of the group, and their support for the Li family will be greatly reduced. At that time, Lin Fengting didn't go on, but glanced at Li Honghe intentionally or unintentionally. Li Honghe drank tea with a calm expression. 3 years later, there would be a general election. Wu Zhengmin would retire, and Li Honghe's health might not be able to support it. If Zhou Yuanshan was defeated in Maiqing, the Li family would really be at the end of its road at that time. On the contrary, if Zhou Yuanshan took advantage of the situation and absorbed the team left by Wu Zhengmin, no matter how bad the Li family was, with Jianghu as the foundation, it would at least have a chance to breathe. The giant group would definitely support Zhou Yuanshan, and the southeast group would definitely oppose it. It was not difficult to guess the position of Kunlun City. The loose giant group might not be able to withstand the cooperation of the Southeast group and the Special Warfare group at that time. As for the academics, there were more important goals 3 years later, so it was bound to not give them too much support. Therefore, how far Li Tianlan could develop in these 3 years and how much support he could give Zhou Yuanshan became the key. "I've met Yuanshan. With him and Zhengmin, Jianghu is not a big problem. At present, this matter is temporarily over. When will you leave?" Li Honghe looked at Li Tianlan and asked. Now, Li Tianlan said. The storm in Lin and had settled down, and there would not be too many ups and downs in 2 or 3 years. It was meaningless for him to stay here. Okay. Li Honghe nodded, glanced at the door of the villa out of the corner of his eye, and showed a smile. A light figure walked into the hall, wearing a red dress. She looked as charming as fire, but her temperament was as clear as water. She blinked at Li Tianlan and said in a clear voice, "You're back." Dongqing Rushi. Li Tianlan was a little stunned and nodded subconsciously. "Why are you here?" "I came with my sister," Dongqing Rushi said softly. Dongqing Rushi said softly. She sat down beside Li Tianlan obediently and reached out to hold one of his hands. Li Honghe looked at this scene with warm eyes and a hearty smile. "Fengting, don't you think these 2 children are a good match? When the final maneuver is over, I'll go to Zhongyuan in person to set their wedding date as soon as possible." Li Tianlan frowned. Li Honghe didn't seem to notice this. He looked at Dongqing Rushi with a smile and said, "Girl, what do you think of your engagement with Tianlan?" "No." Dongqing Rushi shook her head and glanced at Li Tianlan. "I'll listen to Tianlan." Li Honghe laughed and didn't hide his joy. "There's no hurry about the wedding date. Let's talk about it in a few years," Li Tianlan said in a calm tone. "No matter how busy you are, can you be so busy that you don't even have time to get married?" There was a sharp flash in Li Honghe's eyes, and he was a little unhappy. "Let's wait and see." Li Tianlan's tone was brief, suppressing the emotions in his heart. Dongqing Rushi looked at Li Tianlan in a daze. After a long time, she silently lowered her head, but did not let go of Li Tianlan's hand. "Go pack up first, and we'll go to Huiting later." Li Tianlan took a deep breath and squeezed Dongqing Rushi's slightly cold palm. Dongqing Rushi nodded, stood up, and went out. Packing up was an excuse in itself. Neither she nor Li Tianlan had anything to pack. Dongqing Rushi walked out of the villa and sat at the marble table in the yard, holding her cheeks in her hands, in a daze. In the villa, Li Honghe looked at Li Tianlan with a gloomy face. Li Tianlan drank his tea calmly. The engagement was set many years ago. It's not negotiable. After a long time, Li Honghe seemed to calm down and said word by word. "I don't disagree." Li Tianlan said calmly, "I'm just waiting." "Waiting for what?" Li Honghe's tone was a little cold. "Waiting for me to die?" Li Tianlan frowned and seemed to be a little annoyed. He lit a cigarette and took a big drag. "Because of Qin Weibai?" Li Honghe eased his tone and asked. "Yes." Li Tianlan spoke bluntly. "Do you know her? Or do you know who she is?" Li Honghe asked in a deep voice. "I don't deny that she has helped you a lot at this stage, but can you be sure that her help is a good thing for you in the end?" Li Tianlan raised his head. His eyes were bright and sharp, like the bright sword light after it was unsheathed. "You don't believe her?" Li Tianlan asked. "I do," Li Honghe said calmly, "but I can't find the basis for trust. You, me, the Wang family of Beihai, and the whole dark world, no one knows Samsara Palace, and no one knows Qin Weibai. When Qin Weibai first appeared in Huiting, the 6 investigated her through their own intelligence channels. They only knew that she came from a small mountain village in the southwest. But after all these years, the 6 tried their best. They couldn't even find any clue about her parents, not to mention that small mountain village. There was no clue at all. Do you understand? She looked at her grandson's raised eyebrows and sighed softly. I can trust Qin Weibai, but I'd rather cooperate with the Dongqing clan. After all, they know everything. And when it comes to Zhongzhou State, not to mention that Samsara Palace is not in Zhongzhou State, even if they are here, they can't help you as much as the Dongqing clan. Marrying Rushi is the best for you and the Li family. Not the best for me. Li Tianlan looked at Li Honghe with burning eyes. I really don't know her past, but I believe in her feelings for me. For me, this is the basis of all trust. Feelings. Li Honghe sneered. Do you know where these feelings come from? Li Tianlan had been stunned and couldn't say a word. What's Qin Weibai's identity? What's your identity? Now you do have feelings, but where did they come from? Is this kind of inexplicable feelings the basis of trust? Why is she so good to you? Do you understand? Li Honghe asked. He took a deep look at his grandson whose face was changing and said calmly, "Behind the inexplicable deep feelings, there must be a debt. This kind of debt may be in the past, or it may be in the future. She may know that she is destined to owe you something in the future, so she makes it up to you now. I believe in such feelings. But I don't." As he spoke, the muscles at the corner of his mouth twitched, and a touch of pain and anger flashed in his eyes. Lin Fengting's mouth also twitched. "I'm going to Huiting." Li Tianlan stood up and walked out of the living room without looking back. Obviously, he didn't intend to say anything more on this issue. Li Honghe stood up abruptly, as if he wanted Li Tianlan to stop. Lin Fengting waved his hand with a bitter smile, interrupted Li Honghe's anger, and let Li Tianlan leave. "Senior Li, I know what you are worried about," Lin Fengting said helplessly, "but what you are worried about is unlikely. Qin Weibai does owe Tianlan, but now she is making up for it, not harming him." "Not now." Li Honghe sat down. "But in the final battle of Snow Country, if she doesn't die for Tianlan, what will happen in the future?" Lin Fengting's eyes were complicated. He really knew what Li Honghe was worried about. But he also knew Qin Weibai. He really knew her. When in Australia, he agreed to lend the sword to Qin Weibai on the condition that he met the master of Samsara Palace. What everyone didn't know was that he did meet the master of Samsara Palace in Lin, and a few days ago. After meeting the master of Samsara Palace, he knew the origin of Samsara Palace, Qin Weibai, her debt, and the cause and effect that Lin Su said that day. "Senior Li, after the final battle of Snow Country, Samsara Palace is destined to be destroyed," Lin Fengting said softly. "But Samsara Palace and Qin Weibai are two different things. I can't see through her fate." Li Honghe said in a deep voice, "She has the appearance of chaos. If she doesn't die in the future." Chapter 347. When he left Lin An, in addition to Dongqing Rushi, who went back with him, Li Tianlan also had a very famous driver. Lin Fengting stayed in Lin An, but he sent his son Lin Yuxian to Huiting. Li Tianlan and Dongqing Rushi sat in the back row. Lin Yuxian drove the car with a smile on his face, carefree and in a good mood. Did Yuxian go to Huiting to see the final maneuver? Li Tianlan took out a cigarette and handed it over, asking casually. In the end, he didn't let the heir of the Lin clan call him brother-in-law, and Lin Yuxian didn't let Li Tianlan call him brother Lin. They called each other by name. Although they were not very familiar with each other, now they were on the same side. So their relationship was relatively harmonious. "Yes." Lin Yuxian took the cigarette and subconsciously glanced at Dongqing Rushi in the rearview mirror, only to find that the genius of the Dongqing clan didn't feel disgusted. Instead, she took out a lighter to help Li Tianlan light the cigarette. He smiled and said, "The final maneuver of the two academies of Jianghu State is quite important every time, and this one is even more so. With you, Xianxia, Gu Hanshan, and Jiang Shangyu, this maneuver can be said to be the most valuable one. If I don't watch such a big show, I will regret it for the rest of my life. Not only me, but the people of the superpowers in the dark world will certainly collect relevant information even if they don't come. Now the Sky Academy is the focus of attention." Li Tianlan suddenly remembered the chat with Qin Weibai a few days ago. It was a chat about the Chosen One. Qin Weibai said that in this era, if someone could face Lin Fengting, deity, and the master of Samsara Palace with murderous weapons and not hurt his foundation, he would be the chosen one of this era. But this era was about to pass. Next was the era of young people. Wang Xiangxiao, Gu Hanshan, and Jiang Shangyu would all be the top combat forces of Jianghu State in the future. If his foundation was not hurt in the face of their siege, would he really deserve the title of the chosen one of Jianghu State? Li Tianlan didn't consider whether he could do it or not. He was already considering what risks and benefits it would bring to him. In the final maneuver, if he really defeated everyone in this way, then no one would doubt his potential and future. But the Wang family of Beihai and Kunlun city's desire to kill him would be so strong that it couldn't be any stronger. Li Tianlan was very clear about this. He was thinking about how many people would protect him at all costs. As long as he survived, the enormous prestige he had obtained after becoming the #1 expert of the younger generation would become tangible benefits. His future development in the Southern Heaven region would also be smooth. The final maneuver, Li Tianlan murmured to himself. After the Yuzhou conference, the final maneuver would undoubtedly become a watershed for the Li family. In the long run, it was even more crucial than the Yuzhou conference. The Yuzhou conference demonstrated the Li family's past foundation, while the final maneuver meant the Li family's future potential. The time interval between the two events was so short. Li Honghe and Li Tianlan seemed to really connect the past and the future. Tianlan, are you really going to Tiannan to develop after the final maneuver? Lin Yuxian casually turned off the music in the car and asked with a smile. Li Tianlan came to his senses and nodded. There is a chance there. I don't want to miss it. Do you mind if I go to Tiannan with you to have a look? Lin Yuxian chuckled and took a deep drag on his cigarette. He was leisurely and carefree, and his hands were about to leave the steering wheel. Li Tianlan froze for a moment. Then, he was shocked and sat up straight subconsciously. Are you going to Tiannan too? He asked. Why? Are you looking down on me? Lin Yuxian said with a smile. I'm not afraid of any of the few young heavenly sons in Jianghu state at present. Well, I shouldn't be a match for Xianxia. What I lack is not sword intent, but realm. I may suffer a little in physical strength, but the difference won't be too big. If I go to Tiannan, I won't be a burden and can still help. I believe you. Li Tianlan looked at Lin Yuxian strangely. Lin Yuxian's current realm was only half a step away from the peak of the thunder-shocking realm. There was no doubt about his talent and inheritance. But he couldn't figure out why Lin Yuxian went to Tiannan. Does Uncle Lin know that you're going to Tiannan? Li Tianlan asked straightforwardly. Yes. Lin Yuxian nodded. He doesn't support or oppose it. Everything depends on my choice. The Lin clan never enters the secular world. Li Tianlan said slowly. Lin Yuxian disapproved of this rule. It's true that we don't enter the secular world. But it's only the people of the Lin clan's headquarters who don't enter the secular world. To be honest, if you hadn't appeared, I might have been in Jianghu state now. Zhuanyuantai in Jianghu state belongs to the Li family and the Lin clan. If the Li family can't bear the foundation of our ancestors, the Lin clan won't let it go. The original plan was for me to come to Jianghu state to set up a branch of the Lin clan. Now that you've appeared, I'm much more relaxed. I've always wanted to say thank you. Now I should go to Tiannan to help you with a little. And maybe I'll find the dark world wonderful in the future, and directly set up a branch of the Lin clan in your territory. The future of our age is too changeable. Who can tell? Can I choose this? Li Tianlan found it incredible. Lin Yuxian was the heir of this generation of the Lin clan, and he was the only heir. If he left the headquarters, who would inherit the Lin clan in the future? I couldn't choose before. But now I can choose. Lin Yuxian paused and said calmly, in the next 20 years of the Lin clan, my father has found a helmsman who is better than me, him, and everyone else. I won't hide it from you. It's the sister I just recognized. The dark world is very chaotic now, but this 3-year war will come to an end sooner or later. If there is no accident, this storm will end in Snow Country. At present, the Samsara Palace is in a very bad situation. In the past 3 years, it can be said that the Samsara Palace has single-handedly provoked the scuffle in the dark world. Now all the superpowers have almost reacted, but they can't get off. They can only bite the bullet and fight on. But at the last moment, the Samsara Palace, which has attracted too much hatred, will not have a good end. Its destruction is expected. If the Samsara Palace disappears, my father plans to let my sister take care of the Lin clan for the next 20 years. He looked at Li Tianlan and said meaningfully, not the headquarters of the Lin clan. It's the whole Lin clan. Li Tianlan looked stunned. The whole Lin clan. Even with his current knowledge, he didn't know what it meant. The headquarters of the Lin clan, plus the branches scattered around the world, might be a behemoth that could compete with the Wang family of Beihai. At the very least, it was not much weaker than the general superpowers. In terms of foundation, it was much stronger than the current Samsara Palace. Lin Fengting let Qin Weibai take care of the Lin clan for the next 20 years? Until now, thinking of the first time they met in Lin and a few days ago, Lin Yuxian called Qin Weibai's sister. Li Tianlan was pondering over the endless aftertaste. Why? Li Tianlan couldn't help asking. This question was simple and complicated, containing too many things. Among these things, the word trust was particularly sensitive. Why did Lin Fengting trust Qin Weibai so much? Because my sister doesn't care about these things. Lin Yuxian whispered. This is what my father told me. She doesn't care about power and interests. For the dark world, my sister really has no desire. Otherwise, the Samsara Palace must be different today. As long as her requirements are met in the things she cares about most, she is the most trustworthy person. What she cared about most? Li Tianlan thought of Lin Yuxian going to Tiannan with him. He seemed to understand something, but he still couldn't help asking, what does she care about most? Your stability. Lin Yuxian's eyes were a little envious. You are what she cares about most. As long as you can be stable, she won't care about anything else. That was why he followed Li Tianlan to Tiannan. In the case that the Samsara Palace was doomed to be destroyed, the loose and united Lin clan might not be able to give Li Tianlan much help, but at least it could provide Li Tianlan with a way out. Li Tianlan thought of what Li Honghe had just said. Behind the inexplicable deep affection, there must be a debt. If there was really a debt, what kind of debt could make her compensate so affectionately and persistently? Li Tianlan shook his head hard and threw away the cigarette butt in his hand. He didn't speak for a long time. Lin Yuxian smiled, turned on the music in the car again, and drove in silence. There was one thing he didn't say. He now had a choice not to inherit the Lin clan. If he followed Li Tianlan to Tiannan and eventually established a branch of the Lin clan in Jianghu state, such a result was the best for Li Tianlan, Qin Weibai, the Li family, the Wang family of Beihai, the Lin clan, and even the Dongqing clan. Lin Yuxian even knew what Li Honghe was worried about. It was said that in the most glorious period of the Li family, there was a beautiful woman who was also very good to Li Kuang too. However, if Qin Weibai went to the Lin clan, there would be no Samsara palace in the world, and naturally, there would be no old Samsara. Dongqing Rushi, who had been quietly lying in Li Tianlan's arms, moved her body, rubbed Li Tianlan's eyebrows and whispered, "Are you unhappy?" "No." Li Tianlan smiled. "What about you? You haven't spoken since you got in the car. Are you unhappy?" He told Li Honghe to postpone the wedding in front of Dongqing Rushi. Dongqing Rushi had a reason to be unhappy. "No." Dongqing Rushi looked into his eyes. "I have something on my mind." Lin Yuxian, who was driving, twitched the corner of his mouth and almost couldn't help laughing. The so-called worry was naturally something that couldn't be said. The daughter of the Dongqing clan was generous, which was too cute. Li Tianlan almost couldn't help it. He touched Dongqing Rushi's hair and chuckled. "What's on your mind?" Dongqing Rushi was a little hesitant. She turned to look at the night sky outside the car window. Under the night sky, the bright moonlight shone on the highway without streetlights, and it was cold. She looked at the cold moon hanging high in the sky and was lost in thought. "I seem to have heard a name." Dongqing Rushi's eyebrows furrowed in distress. Her eyes were still pure, but at this time, there was a trace of indescribable calmness and clarity, instead of blankness. Chapter 348. When he returned to Huiting, it was nearly 1 o'clock in the morning. The turbulent mid-July had completely passed. July 21st. There were still 10 days before the final maneuver. Li Tianlan did not return to the Sky Academy but went directly to the East Emperor Palace on the outskirts of the city. It was windy late at night in Huiting, and it seemed that rain was coming. The glass palace, which could be said to be quite colorful in the whole of Huiting, was silent and cold in the night. The security guard at the gate of the East Emperor Palace opened the door, and the Audi slowly drove into the East Emperor Palace. Looking at the huge palace in front of him, which was mostly made of glass, Lin Yuxian was amazed. The palace was exquisite and magnificent, and the artificial lake around it was clear and charming. In the dark of the night, the light from the glass and the lake reflected off each other. It was as if the lake had risen directly into the sky, or as if the palace had been built in the water. It was ethereal and ethereal, without the slightest bit of vulgarity. "What a good place," Lin Yuxian said with a smile. "Is this your lair?" "Sort of." Li Tianlan nodded and smiled. "It's just the beginning. It looks gorgeous on the outside, but there's nothing inside." "Nothing." Lin Yuxian smiled strangely. He was indeed a person who was easy to get along with. He was so casual that he seemed to have no pursuit. Although it was not a long journey from Lin An to Huiting, Li Tianlan had already established some good feelings for him. He was such a brother-in-law with great strength but was too lazy to steal any limelight. His motto was to enjoy others' happiness, so Li Tianlan could not help but appreciate him. Li Tianlan responded casually, but he saw Lin Yuxian glancing at Dongqing Rushi with a gloating face. He glanced at Dongqing Rushi with a baffled look. Dongqing Rushi stood beside Li Tianlan, raised her head, and looked at the glass palace in front of her. Following her gaze, he vaguely saw a slim figure standing behind an open window on the top floor of the glass palace. The moment Li Tianlan saw her, the open window was closed, and then the whole palace was lit up. The light shone from the inside out and fell on the artificial lake in front of them. The sparkling lake and the bright palace were like a dream. "Brother-in-law, who is inside?" Lin Yuxian said with a smile. The way he called him brother-in-law was really teasing. Li Tianlan coughed as if he was answering Lin Yuxian's question, but his eyes fell on Dongqing Rushi. "It's Yuetong," he said simply. Wang Yuetong had been staying in Huating. In the first 2 days, she lived in the hotel, and then she moved directly to the East Emperor Palace. The little princess, who had just turned from a girl to a woman, was very clingy. No matter what Li Tianlan was doing before, she would call him every once in a while. However, since Li Tianlan went to Lin N, Wang Yuetong had not called him or even sent him a text message. But the fact that she was still here spoke volumes. Li Tianlan's eyes were warm. "I know her." Dongqing Rushi nodded and said softly. Li Tianlan thought she would continue to say something, but after the 4 words, Dongqing Rushi, there was no more. How could such an attitude be ambiguous? She had no attitude at all. Li Tianlan felt a headache and subconsciously began to imagine the scene of Dongqing Rushi and Wang Yuetong meeting later. The door of the summer palace opened. Wang Yuetong stood at the door, bathed in the crystal light. She wore a moon-white nightgown, looking a little lazy and charming. Dongqing Rushi quietly put her little hand in Li Tianlan's. Li Tianlan felt a little helpless. He took Dongqing Rushi's hand and said softly, "Let's go in." "I'll just walk around." Lin Yuxian laughed and whispered, "Although I like crowds, I'm not interested in the scene of domestic violence. This place is good. I'll just walk around. Don't worry about me." Li Tianlan cursed in a low voice, "F*ck your domestic violence," and took Dongqing Rushi to the door. Wang Yuetong stood quietly in front of the door. Her big eyes were full of complicated emotions. She was a little uneasy and a little panicked. Dongqing Rushi looked calmly at the carvings on the marble pillars at the entrance of the summer palace without saying a word. "Why didn't you call me these days?" Li Tianlan whispered. "I thought you went back to Yuzhou." Wang Yuetong shook her head subconsciously and whispered, "If I go back to Yuzhou, will I never see you again?" "How come?" Li Tianlan shook his head and reached out to touch Wang Yuetong's hair. His voice was warm. "Do you know what happened in Lin'an?" Wang Yuetong bit her lip and said nothing. She was the little princess of the Wang family of Beihai, but she couldn't represent anyone. She couldn't even say sorry to Li Tianlan. This obviously uneasy but unable to say anything was the most embarrassing and heavy position. Li Tianlan sighed and held Wang Yuetong in his arms. He was still holding Dongqing Rushi's hand. Or it could be said that he was held by Dongqing Rushi, while his other hand was holding Wang Yuetong. The posture was a little weird. Wang Yuetong was silent. Dongqing Rushi was still studying the carvings on the pillars beside her. "Tianlan, don't you blame me?" Wang Yuetong held Li Tianlan tightly and asked nervously. At that time, she knew what happened in Lin, and almost immediately. Her original sweet and happy little thoughts were also covered with a layer of shadow. In the past few days, Wang Yuetong could be said to have lived like a year. Now that she was in Li Tianlan's arms, she suddenly felt relaxed. "Why should I blame you?" Li Tianlan asked with a smile. Wang Yuetong wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. The invincible realm expert who seriously injured Senior Li with one sword in Lin, and was her biological father. More than 20 years after the Li family was destroyed, the Wang family of Beihai showed its position to the remaining Li family for the first time. The two families used to be very close, but now the contradiction was so sharp and obvious. "What happened in Lin and—" Wang Yuetong hesitated. "What happened in Lin, and has nothing to do with you," Li Tianlan said calmly. That's the choice of the entire Wang family of Beihai. Yue Tong, I don't blame you, because you can't decide anything. But it doesn't mean that I don't have any thoughts about the Wang family of Beihai. Between you and me, no one is sorry to anyone, let alone right or wrong. But since we have different positions, and what happened in Lin and happened, I must write it down. To be honest, I don't hate the Wang family of Beihai or your father. But since he chose to attack the Li family, my counterattack in the future will certainly not be peaceful. He paused, looked at Wang Yuetong and continued. As for you, I thought you would go back to Yuzhou without saying a word. If you really go back to Yuzhou, I won't blame you. If you are still here, I won't blame you. You, a woman, can still persist in the situation that the Wang family of Beihai and the Li family are against each other. Why should I, a man, give up? It's not that I don't have this responsibility. Otherwise, you are really blind. Really? Wang Yuetong raised her head in Li Tianlan's arms, with tears in her eyes. It could be seen how much pressure and suffering she had suffered in the past few days. Of course it's true. You are my woman. If you don't let go, I certainly won't let go. Li Tianlan pinched Wang Yuetong's little nose dotingly, very gently. Dongqing Rushi squeezed Li Tianlan's hand hard, very heavily. Li Tianlan felt a pain in his palm, and then he remembered that he had ignored the daughter of the Dongqing family. Let me introduce. Li Tianlan bit the bullet and said, This is Dongqing Rushi, and this is Wang Yuetong. Even if you haven't met before, you should have heard of each other. Silence. There was an awkward silence that made people's scalps numb. Wang Yuetong lay in Li Tianlan's arms. Dongqing Rushi held Li Tianlan's hand. The two seemed not to hear Li Tianlan's words, and they didn't even bother to do the most basic courtesy. Li Tianlan subconsciously thought of Qin Weibai. If she was here. Li Tianlan thought about it, and he really wasn't sure what kind of scene it would be if Qin Weibai was here. He suddenly looked forward to that scene. Li Tianlan stood for a while. Seeing that the two didn't want to talk, he sighed softly and was about to speak. Dongqing Rushi moved her palm. Wang Yuetong stood up from Li Tianlan's arms and said softly, I'll prepare the bathwater for you. Stay with me tonight. I have something to tell you. A charming blush appeared on her face, and she whispered, I'm ready. The corner of Li Tianlan's mouth twitched, and he took a deep breath. Before he spoke, Wang Yuetong continued, There is a document in the study, from the Sky Academy. You can take a look at it when you have time. She turned directly to the bathroom. Dongqing Rushi was still quietly looking at the flowers and plants engraved on the marble pillar. From beginning to end, Dongqing Rushi and Wang Yuetong seemed to ignore each other and never looked at each other. Was this considered jealousy? Wang Yuetong's figure disappeared. Dongqing Rushi finally turned her head and looked at Li Tianlan. The light in the hall shone on the door. Her eyes were pure and penetrating. Will you accompany me tonight? Dongqing Rushi looked at Li Tianlan with burning eyes. She squeezed Li Tianlan's hand, turned her head and whispered, If you accompany me, I can do what I did for you at my sister's house again. Her voice was low, and her face was flushed. Dongqing Rushi. Wang Yuetong. One on the left and the other on the right. Both sides were temptations. Li Tianlan almost collapsed. He forced himself to calm down and said helplessly, I won't go anywhere tonight. I'll meditate in the study. There were 10 days before the final maneuver. At this time, he really should seriously adjust his state. Dongqing Rushi said faintly, Oh. Li Tianlan took her to the top floor and arranged a bedroom for Dongqing Rushi next to his bedroom. The 3 bedrooms were next to each other. Li Tianlan was in the middle, and Dongqing Rushi and Wang Yuetong were on the left and right. Lin Youxian's bedroom was arranged next to Yu Donglai's. The old man had been living here. At this time, he seemed to be meditating, so Li Tianlan did not disturb him. After doing all this, Li Tianlan went to the study downstairs. The document from the Sky Academy that Wang Yuetong said was placed in the center of the desk. It was said to be a document, but in fact, it was just a letter. Li Tianlan opened the envelope and read it with no expression on his face. He had read this letter a few days ago, but it was not for him, but for Dongqing Rushi. In addition to the relatively formal letter, all the students who were qualified to receive this letter also received a phone call from the teachers of the 2 academies. Li Tianlan's phone call was from Zhuang Huayang, the principal of the Sky Academy. Today was July 21st. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon on July 23rd, Gu Xingyun, the governor of Kunlun City, would come to Huiting accompanied by Gu Qianchuan, the first elder, to talk with the top 50 people on the total credit list of the two academies. At that time, all the contents, order, and rules of the maneuver would be fully announced. Li Tianlan threw the letter on the table. He sat in the chair and closed his eyes. He did not meditate. He was sleeping. Now was the only way for him to reach his peak state as soon as possible. Chapter 349. The secular world was like a sea of bitterness. But there were always a few lucky people. Even in the secular world where all living things were bitter, they were still the darling of fate. For Wang Yuetong, her life should not have the so-called sorrow and pressure. As the little princess of the Wang family of Beihai and a genius with wind vein, she might not be as dazzling as her brother Wang Xianxiao's wind and thunder veins, heavenly king heart and exquisite bone, but a wind vein was worth cultivating in any superpower. However, no one in the Wang family of Beihai had ever strictly supervised and sharpened her martial arts. Whether it was Wang Tianzong or summer solstice, they had never made any clear requirements for her from childhood to adulthood. Happiness had been running through her childhood and girlhood, sweet as a dream. This was a life where she didn't need to worry about anything or struggle for any fantasy. She also practiced martial arts, but she never paid attention to it. 3 years ago, she was at the peak of the ice-condensing realm, and now she still hadn't entered the fire-flaming realm. Wang Yuetong also had some contact with the operation of commercial investment capital. Her sister-in-law, who was internally determined to be the future hostess of the Wang family of Beihai since she was born, was a real genius in this regard. When some famous economists, professors, business tycoons and financial tycoons taught that sister-in-law, she listened in a lot. The Wang family of Beihai was unrivaled in the field of biological gene technology. There were all kinds of gene potions for different purposes. Wang Yuetong also studied them and used some extremely precious raw materials to make a batch of invaluable facial masks. In addition, Wang Yuetong also learned a little bit of bel canto, ballet, piano, guitar, guzheng, painting, and calligraphy. She could be said to be a real all-rounder, knowing everything but proficient in none. From childhood to adulthood, she did whatever she wanted to do, and no one forced her to do it if she didn't want to do it. Because her life was destined not to have too many ups and downs. Her future was stable, happy and free. It was noble and elegant, calm and luxurious, dinner and champagne, sweet and leisurely. Her life would not have ups and downs and difficult setbacks, so it was good to be casual. Because of this, the entanglement between Wang Yuetong and Li Tianlan was regarded by the whole Wang family of Beihai as Wang Yuetong's self-abandonment. Abandoning oneself to degeneration. Wang Yuetong did not deny this statement, but she had never regretted it. She always felt that a woman's life was only complete when she met a man who made her have the courage to fly into the fire like a moth. He had fallen and fallen. Even if he really became an inseparable and chaotic relationship in the future and became a karmic obstacle entangled with gratitude and grudges, there was nothing to regret. At least Wang Yuetong didn't regret it. It was rainy on July 22nd in Huiting. The rain continued to fall from dawn to dusk. The rain continued to fall without any signs of stopping. Wang Yuetong silently walked out of the study and gently closed the door. In the study, Li Tianlan sat in a chair, still sleeping quietly. Li Tianlan had slept for nearly 48 hours since he came back from Lin, but there was still no sign of him waking up. His breathing was steady and regular, as if he had fallen into the deepest sleep. Wang Yuetong hesitated several times and finally did not wake him up. This was the 5th time she had entered the study. Li Tianlan did not wake up, so she could only continue to wait. Waiting. From the moment she made up her mind to be with Li Tianlan, she knew that this was something she had to get used to in the future. The TV was on in the hall on the 1st floor. Wang Yuetong held the railing and looked down. On the wide sofa, Dongqing Rushi's body was curled up, looking lonely. Wang Yuetong frowned and looked a little hesitant. Li Tianlan had been back for 2 days. Dongqing Rushi naturally lived here. Neither of them woke Li Tianlan up, nor did they say a word to each other. Wang Yuetong stayed in her room most of the time. Dongqing Rushi was really free. She meditated, cooked, ran in the morning, and watched TV. Nothing was delayed. It seemed that they could not stand the atmosphere here. Yu Donglai and Lin Yuxian were rarely at home. One went out to visit friends, and the other went out to play. They left for nearly 2 days and did not come back until noon. At this time, no one knew where they were. Wang Yuetong hesitated whether to talk to Dongqing Rushi or not. She didn't even know what to talk about. She just felt that it was very wrong. Dongqing Rushi might be able to deal with such an awkward atmosphere calmly, but she couldn't. Otherwise, she would not have locked herself in the room for 2 days in a row with an attitude close to concession. Wang Yuetong narrowed her eyes and quietly looked at Dongqing Rushi on the sofa downstairs. Dongqing Rushi on the sofa seemed to feel the hostile eyes, so she raised her head. One was up and the other was down, 6 floors high, but they were still clear in each other's eyes. Wang Yuetong took a deep breath, turned to the elevator, and planned to go downstairs. The phone suddenly rang. Wang Yuetong looked at the caller ID, and her face suddenly changed. The phone was still ringing. On the screen, the word "daddy" seemed to have suddenly become extremely sharp, easily piercing through all her defenses. Wang Yuetong's hand holding the phone trembled a little. She pressed the answer button and gently said hello. "Yuetong, where are you?" On the phone, Wang Tianzong's voice was clear and calm, without any extra emotion. "In Huiting." Wang Yuetong bit her lip and whispered. During the 3 years when Li Tianlan left, the relationship between her and Wang Tianzong was extremely stiff. They didn't even talk on the phone a few times a year. Wang Tianzong had a headache about his daughter's degeneration, while Wang Yuetong continued to insist in silence. If Li Tianlan didn't appear, the relationship between father and daughter would always be stiff. "East Emperor Palace?" Wang Tianzong asked. Wang Yuetong's face was a little pale, but she didn't say a word. On the phone, Wang Tianzong seemed to sigh softly. "Don't you go back to Yuzhou? Your Uncle Yi called me several times and said that you asked for 10 days leave, but you haven't gone back yet." "Dad, I want to resign." Wang Yuetong held the phone and said very carefully but firmly. "Resign?" Wang Tianzong thought for a while and said blandly, "If you resign, what can you do?" Wang Yuetong fell silent again. She knew what she was doing, but she didn't know how to say it. She believed that her father on the other end of the phone could understand what she meant. Wang Tianzong was also silent. On both ends of the phone, between father and daughter, all the emotions seemed to be completely frozen for a moment. "Go home." After a long time, Wang Tianzong said blandly, "I won't go back." Wang Yuetong suddenly laughed. Her voice was very clear, with a lightness and cleverness that Wang Tianzong was familiar with, but there was a trace of persistence in it. "Dad, I want to stay in East Emperor Palace and stay with him." "He's an enemy." Wang Tianzong's tone was simple and straightforward. "But he's not my enemy. For me, he's my man." Wang Yuetong said softly, "Have you really made up your mind?" Wang Tianzong said calmly, "Do you really want to go all the way?" "This is not a decision." Wang Yuetong said softly, "I just respect my own feelings. Dad, I'm not angry with you by saying this. I can be sure that I really love him. Maybe in your eyes, I haven't been with him for a long time. But since love at first sight can happen, it's not difficult to understand that I love him. I believe that he's a man worthy of all my feelings. It doesn't matter who he is to the Wang family of Beihai, an enemy, a friend, or a stranger. Dad, I'm just a little girl spoiled by you. I haven't done anything for the family, and I haven't thought about anything for the family. It's the same now. Whether he's an enemy or a friend of the family, I love him. I can't turn back, and I don't want to turn back. Even if you put aside your standpoint, he may not be suitable for you." Wang Tianzong said calmly, "You can hand over your whole life, but Li Tianlan's life is destined to be more than love. Do you remember my evaluation of Li Tianlan when I first met him?" Wang Yuetong's eyes were a little dazed. She remembered the meeting between Li Tianlan and her father in Huiting. At that time, she actually didn't know her father's evaluation of Li Tianlan. Wang Xianxia conveyed the evaluation to her afterward. Only 8 words. "A wolf's ambition was never a good match." I probably know something about the Li family's situation over the years, so I can guess Li Tianlan's psychology. Apart from potential, he had nothing else. That was why he wanted so much. Power, wealth, status, women, he wants everything. What kind of woman is Qin Weibai? It's no exaggeration to say that if I were 10 years younger, even I would be tempted. Of course, I would just be tempted, and I wouldn't really do anything. No matter who gets such a woman, he should be satisfied. But Li Tianlan is not satisfied. He still wants you, wants Dongqing Rushi. I can be sure that he will have more than 3 or 5 women in the future. You may have a place in his heart, but you will never be the most important. You will always be just one of his many women. You love him, but does he love you? He may have real feelings for 1 or 2 women, but with Qin Weibai, you don't have a big chance. Let's make a bet. You take the phone to Li Tianlan now. As long as I hear Li Tianlan say sincerely that he loves my daughter, I will not oppose your relationship in the future. How about that? Wang Tianzong was surprisingly talkative. In recent years, Zhongzhou Sword Emperor had become more and more reticent. It could be seen that he was really worried about Wang Yuetong. Wang Yuetong bit her lip and felt a little wronged, but she did not agree to bet with her father. She held the phone tightly and forced herself to calm down. Dad, I've decided. I'm sorry. Wang Tianzong suddenly fell silent. After a long time, when Wang Yuetong was about to hang up the phone, 3 words came from the phone. Go home. Wang Tianzong said and hung up the phone directly. Wang Yuetong burst into tears in an instant. Go home. Wang Tianzong said these 3 words twice. But the meaning was completely different. Wang Yuetong wiped her tears, and her eyes became firm again. She turned into the elevator and went downstairs. In the hall on the 1st floor, Dongqing Rushi was still sitting on the sofa, watching Tom and Jerry, which was very childish for adults. She held the remote control in her hand and smiled quietly. Yu Donglai and Lin Yu were sitting in a remote corner of the hall, playing chess. The moment Wang Yuetong came out, both of them focused on her at the same time. Wang Yuetong's eyes were slightly red, but she looked very calm. She didn't know until the moment Wang Tianzong hung up the phone. Just as she had just braced herself to answer her father's call. There were some things, no matter how reluctant she had to face them. She took a deep breath, walked directly to Dongqing Rushi, reached out her hand, and said blandly, "Give it to me." Chapter 350. The war between women could never be as brutal as the men's fists, but the forms that were displayed were more colorful. There were verbal battles on different occasions, open and covert attacks from every corner, sarcasm and ridicule without batting an eyelid. 2 extremely beautiful young women from extraordinary family backgrounds. Even if they were to pull each other's hair or ears, it would still be a rare sight to see. This was King lively. Otherwise, why would the ratings of some palace dramas in recent years far exceed those of war dramas? Those rising ratings were not all contributed by sisters, aunts, and aunts. No, young men also loved it. Lin Yuxian was such a man. He liked lively scenes. At present, the battle between Dongqing Rushi and Wang Yuetong seemed to have just begun, but it was enough to make him excited. He sat in the corner of the hall with Yu Donglai and was too lazy to play chess for a while. He looked around and found that there were no snacks around, so he casually lit a cigarette and looked at Dongqing Rushi and Wang Yuetong who were confronting each other. He gloated and muttered to himself, "No, no, no." Yu Donglai shook his head helplessly. The old man was old and had little interest in watching lively scenes. He had already wondered if he should go upstairs and take out Li Tianlan, who had slept for 2 days. The silent confrontation in front of the TV continued. Wang Yuetong kept reaching out and became calmer. "Give it to me." Dongqing Rushi looked up at Wang Yuetong. Her eyes were as clear as water, and her small hand subconsciously clenched the remote control in her hand. Wang Yuetong did not urge her. She just reached out and waited quietly. But no one doubted that she would be savage when she was impatient. She was now just a young expert who had not yet entered the fire-flaming realm. In the face of Dongqing Rushi of the thunder-shocking realm, there was a huge gap in their combat strength. But as 2 women who had the same man, the martial arts realm was actually nothing. Dongqing Rushi hesitated, pursed her lips, and handed the remote control to Wang Yuetong. Her expression was neither aggrieved nor angry. She just looked at her quietly. Wang Yuetong took the remote control with many buttons and aimed it at the TV. Although it was called a television, it was actually a giant screen that was almost beyond the imagination of ordinary people. Its specifications were almost equivalent to the sum of 2 giant screens in a movie theater. The screen occupied the entire front wall of the hall, and it was so domineering that it was almost exaggerated. It was installed here by Wang Yuetong herself 3 years ago. It was installed according to the specifications of the Beihai Province Police Department Command Center. All the functions were available, and the TV broadcast function was just the tip of the iceberg. Wang Yuetong pressed several buttons. The image of the cat and mouse that occupied the entire wall began to shrink. The huge screen might look very comfortable, but it was hard for the eyes to accept after a long time. Wang Yuetong adjusted the picture to a more comfortable size, handed the remote control back to Dongqing Rushi and asked, "Is it much better now?" Dongqing Rushi took the remote control in a daze and said obediently, "Thank you." Tianlan should wake up in the evening. I plan to cook dinner for him. Let's go grocery shopping together. Wang Yuetong continued to speak in a lukewarm tone, without kindness or malice. Sure. Dongqing Rushi sat on the sofa and seemed to instinctively make a defensive posture, wrapping her hands around her slender and straight legs. I want Tianlan to accompany me tonight. Wang Yuetong looked down at Dongqing Rushi. Silence. Either she broke out in silence, or she would die in silence. Dongqing Rushi did not break out. She silently held her legs, looking like a doormat. She said, lowering her head. Wang Yuetong's eyes flickered, and her tone softened unconsciously. I heard that you and Tianlan were born on the same day, the same month, and the same year? For Dongqing Rushi, this was something to be happy about. She looked a little happy, and her face bloomed with a smile. But Wang Yuetong did not make her happy for long. Then I'm older than you. You have to call me sister from now on. Dongqing Rushi's happy little face froze, and she looked at Wang Yuetong quietly. And I've slept with him. I'm the sister in every way. Wang Yuetong looked straight into Dongqing Rushi's eyes. Sister. After a long time, Dongqing Rushi whispered, then turned her head, and her mouth seemed to pout subconsciously. Wang Yuetong nodded. I'm going to change clothes. Let's go shopping together. She turned around and walked into the elevator. Was it over? Was it over? Lin Yuxian, who was still waiting to see a good show, was stunned. There was no quarrel, no abuse, and no fight. One was majestic and strong, and the other was pitiful and resigned. Sister and sister. Were they going to love each other? Lin Yuxian, who was watching, said that he could not accept it. It was absolutely unacceptable. Dongqing Rushi didn't look like the kind of person who would be killed in a second. What's going on? Lin Yuxian looked depressed and annoyed. Good thing. Yu Donglai smiled and fiddled with the chessboard. Boy, do you still want to play? You're going to lose this game. It's really a good thing. Lin Yuxian nodded. But I still have to ask. He hesitated, ignoring Yu Donglai's stare, and walked over with a low smile. Dongqing Rushi was still nestled on the sofa, watching Tom and Jerry, which had shrunk down and was very comfortable. Her eyes were clear, and she seemed to forget the grievances just now. The corners of her mouth were slightly bent, as if she was smiling. Lin Yuxian came over and sat on the sofa on the other side. He looked at Dongqing Rushi and smiled bitterly. Well. He took the initiative to speak. Dongqing Rushi turned to look at him. I can't stand it. Lin Yuxian patted his thigh and felt bitter. She was indeed a bitch, and she was playing with fire here. Why do you call her sister? He meant it. Dongqing Rushi was Li Tianlan's fiancée, which was fully recognized by both families. However, Qin Weibai beat her to it. She had to call her sister. No one would feel ashamed if she lost to Qin Weibai. Now there was Wang Yuetong, and she was also a sister. How aggrieved she felt. She couldn't stand it. You don't like her? Dongqing Rushi looked at Lin Yuxian and asked. It's not about whether I like her or not. This is your family affair. Although the Lin clan and the Wang family of Beihai have a deep relationship, the Lin clan's position is clear now. I'm not familiar with Yuetong. I haven't even met her before, but I've met her brother once. So if you really want to say who is partial, I will definitely support you. She should call you sister. Lin Yuxian said helplessly. Whatever. Dongqing Rushi was indifferent, without the slightest anger. Don't you feel aggrieved? Lin Yuxian looked curious. Not really. Dongqing Rushi thought for a moment and said softly, Tianlan should be happy in this way. Lin Yuxian was stunned and didn't know what to say for a while. Wang Yuetong, who had always ignored Dongqing Rushi, took the initiative to speak. Dongqing Rushi obediently called her sister. There was no doubt that the two women wanted to make their men happy. Lin Yuxian suddenly lost interest in watching the fun. He suddenly felt a little envious. He envied Li Tianlan's luck. Dongqing Rushi sat cross-legged and straightened her body, holding a pillow. She stared at the screen in front of her seriously, but her eyes were not focused. She thought of a lot of things. She thought of Li Tianlan, whom she had heard since she was a child. Li Tianlan, who lived in the depths of her heart and could not be more perfect. Everyone was emphasizing the identity of the fiancé. Grandpa said that he was destined to be a great man in the future, like the current Wang Tianzong, or even like the amazing ancestor of the Wang family of Beihai. Her father said that the Dongqing clan owed him too much. In her memory, it seemed that only her mother had said something different. Her mother said that she would be Li Tianlan's wife in the future, so she owed him. She just hoped that when they were together in the future, she would not forget that the man who became her husband had borne a lot of things that she should have borne. Or responsibilities. Yuzhou. The building of the army headquarters. When Dongqing Wudi, the standing minister of the army headquarters, slammed the documents in his hand on his desk, Lieutenant General Bai Qingzhao, the Deputy Secretary General of the army headquarters, was sitting opposite him and drinking tea with a smile. Bai Qingzhao was one of the backbone generals of the giant group, the eldest son of Bai Zhanfang, the patriarch of the Bai family, Bai Qingqian's biological brother, and Dongqing Wudi's brother-in-law. He was originally the deputy commander of the Central Theater of Operations. 2 years ago, after Dongqing Wudi entered the army headquarters from the Border Control Corps, the giant group almost used all its resources to transfer Bai Qingzhao to the post of Deputy Secretary General of the Army Headquarters. The Deputy Commander of the Theater of Operations and the Deputy Secretary General of the Army Headquarters seemed to be similar. It could only be regarded as a small promotion, but the actual meaning was very different. The President of Jianghu State was also the Minister of the Army Headquarters, but he rarely interfered with the daily work of the Army Headquarters. The daily work of the Army Headquarters was presided over by the Standing Minister. In the Army Headquarters, the role that could check and balance the Standing Minister was not the 2 deputy ministers, but the Secretary General who did not have the rank of Marshal. So 2 years ago, even though Qi Baitsong, the flag-bearer of the Special Warfare Group, retired from the position of Standing Minister, the Secretary General was still in office. The strength of the Special Warfare Group still did not suffer too much. Instead, it gained a lot of benefits out of thin air with Qi Baitsong's retirement. Dongqing Wudi controlled the army headquarters. After 1 term, he was bound to replace the Secretary General with his own people. This was the beginning of Dongqing Wudi establishing his authority in the army. Bai Qingzhao was the only candidate for the Secretary General. It could be said that he was one of Dongqing Wudi's most trustworthy people. What's wrong? Bai Qingzhao glanced at the documents that Dongqing Wudi threw on the table, picked them up casually, and said with a smile, "See for yourself." Dongqing Wudi gritted his teeth, and with a gloomy and angry expression he shouted, "Shameless! A bunch of bastards!" Dongqing Wudi rarely completely lost his composure. Even in front of Bai Qingzhao, who could be absolutely trusted, it was a little out of line for him to behave like this. Bai Qingzhao raised his eyebrows and calmly glanced at the documents that Dongqing Wudi threw on the table. The documents were delivered by Dongqing Wudi's secretary a few minutes ago. At first, both sides didn't take it seriously. Who knew that Dongqing Wudi just glanced at them and directly exploded? Bai Qingzhao had no idea that something big would happen in the military that made Dongqing Wudi lose his composure like this. The document was very thin. Including the cover, there were only 4 or 5 pages. Bai Qingzhao glanced at the cover and subconsciously narrowed his eyes. On the cover was a pale golden city, built between 2 snow-capped peaks, majestic and heavy. This was the emblem of Kunlun City. In other words, this was a document from Kunlun City? Bai Qingzhao seemed to think of something and directly opened the document. He glanced at it in a hurry, and his expression suddenly changed. The content of the document was not complicated, and it could even be said to be clear at a glance. It was about the maneuver of the Sky Academy and the Deep Sea Academy at the end of the month. Kunlun City officially approved the maneuver applications of the two academies. At the same time, it verified the maneuver rules of the two academies and the sequence of the maneuver. At the end of the document were the seals of Kunlun City, the President's office, and the cabinet. This showed that both the President and the Prime Minister had approved this document. "You've gone too far." Bai Qingzhao gritted his teeth and suppressed his anger in his tone. Dongqing Wudi calmed down instead. He took the document again and glanced at it carefully. Then he threw it on the table with cold eyes. "What do you think?" Bai Qingzhao was silent for a while and asked in a deep voice. Dongqing Wudi shook his head with a sneer. "Tianlan grows up too fast. The Li family's comeback also makes some people unable to sit still. So they can't help but be ruthless and make such a maneuver rules. Kunlun City and the Wang family of Beihai really have a tacit understanding." "Is there still room for maneuver?" Bai Qingzhao asked in a low voice. As soon as he spoke, he shook his head first and smiled bitterly. If there was really room for maneuver, how could Dongqing Wudi lose his composure like this? No matter what they plan in private, at least they do it in line with the rules. Dongqing Wudi said. "The President." Bai Qingzhao hesitated. "He can't wait for Kunlun City to do this." Dongqing Wudi sneered and was a little unhappy. The academics can take advantage of this opportunity to get closer to them. What Kunlun City did was in line with the rules, but it broke them. In this situation, if I want to do something, I can only ignore the rules. The giant group is not powerful enough, so it must ask for help from the academics. This kind of thing can only be good for the academics. Besides, they didn't do it, so we don't hate them. The academics will push the boat with the current. Of course, the President will agree. Bai Qingzhao was silent. "What are you going to do?" After a long time he asked slowly. "Do I have a choice?" Dongqing Wudi said calmly. "In this situation, I can only take one step at a time. Kunlun City broke the rules, so I can only be lawless for once. Otherwise, what can I do?" He glanced at Bai Qingzhao and smiled bitterly. If he really did nothing this time, then the Bai family and the Dongqing clan might really break up completely. Fortunately, we're not completely unprepared. Wan Tian has gone to the Eastern Theater of Operations. Isn't this what we're guarding against Kunlun City? Dongqing Wudi said softly. In this case, the Border Control Corps really can't be saved. Bai Qingzhao frowned. "There's always a deal." Dongqing Wudi took a deep breath and gritted his teeth. Then he calmly picked up his mobile phone and dialed a number. The phone was quickly connected, and a low voice sounded on the other end of the line. "Ziyuan, this is Dongqing Wudi. How's the scenery in Tiannan?" Dongqing Wudi laughed. He didn't call Wang Wantian, the current commander of the Eastern Theater of Operations, but Ning Ziyuan, the former commander. The Dongqing clan had prepared for all of this long before the Yuzhou conference began. Ning Ziyuan was transferred to Tiannan. Wang Wantian was transferred to the Eastern Theater of Operations. It was all part of the preparation. So now Dongqing Wudi was angry, but he didn't panic. The so-called game, no matter how complicated it was nothing more than dealing with every move. Chapter 351. Second update. The night rain was still falling. When Li Tianlan opened his eyes, the study was dark and quiet. The rain outside hit the glass messily, and the sound was particularly clear. He stood up and moved his body. He poured himself a glass of warm water and drank it. He suddenly became energetic. The phone on the desk seemed to have been touched. Li Tianlan opened the phone and looked at it. There were no text messages or missed calls. He shook his head hard, lit a cigarette, and opened the window casually. The rain was getting heavier. The rain fell on the lake, and the ripples on the lake continued to spread in the night. The treetops swayed gently in the wind. The light in the courtyard of East Emperor Palace was hazy, with dense water vapor. It was obviously a brilliant summer, but the scene was a little bleak and lonely. Li Tianlan looked at the rain outside the window quietly, and the light in his eyes became more and more calm. Today, his martial arts had reached the basic level, and he stood at the peak that he had never reached under normal conditions. But the peak was not perfect. This imperfection was not because he advanced too fast, nor because his body was too fragile, but because his strength and will were out of balance. In 3 years, he went all the way to the north, through mountains, rivers, seas, polar glaciers, grasslands, deserts, wind, frost, rain, and snow. He almost never stopped. His martial arts was like his road to the north, which was walked step by step in silence. It was extremely solid and stable, and the accumulated sword intent was absolutely pure. His body could bear such difficult training, but his will could not bear the wind, frost, and loneliness of these 3 years. Now, even if he returned to Huiting from the polar region, it was difficult for him to make up for his essence, qi, and spirit in a short time. The imbalance between will and strength meant that he had strength but not enough concentration. Without a will as firm as steel, it was difficult for his sword intent to reach the real purity and peak. The only way Li Tianlan could think of now was to sleep. Only with sufficient and comfortable rest could he gradually adjust his spirit, qi, and spirit back to normal. Li Tianlan looked out of the window, and for a moment, his mind was wandering. His essence, qi, and spirit were damaged, but he did not need to worry about recovery because of his previous foundation. So at this moment, he thought more of the year in the desert. That year, he fell from a high place to a low valley. He abandoned his cultivation of the thunder-shocking realm and started over again. That year, he had crawled in the dark, narrow, and silent labyrinth below the desert prison, where he could only hear his own heartbeat. He had experienced countless times of despair, depression, fear, and madness. Only then did he develop an absolute will that was comparable to the heavenly king heart. Without the experiences of that year, with his original willpower, it would have been impossible for him to have survived those 3 years of destruction. Everything seemed like a coincidence, but it also seemed like an inevitability. He remembered the first words the 2 metaphysical grandmasters said to him when he first met Xianxia and Great Master Wu Wei. Trust in heaven's will? The mandate of heaven was right before their eyes. Even if they did not believe it, they could not disrespect it. The door of the study was gently pushed open from the outside. Wang Yuetong came in and looked at Li Tianlan, who was smoking silently. She said softly, "You're awake." Li Tianlan nodded and said, "I am hungry. The food Rushi and I cooked may not be as good as Senior Yu's. Would you like to try it?" Wang Yuetong said with a smile. Her voice was soft and her eyes were enchanting. After turning from a girl to a woman, the little princess of the Wang family of Beihai was not stingy with her charm in front of Li Tianlan. She really wanted to quietly bloom beside Li Tianlan for a lifetime. "You and Rushi?" Li Tianlan threw the cigarette butt out of the window with a strange look in his eyes. "I've made a deal with her." Wang Yuetong nodded and said, "She will call me sister in the future." Li Tianlan suddenly had nothing to say. Even if he was an immortal, he could not figure out why Dongqing Rushi called Wang Yuetong sister in a short time. "Of course, I'm destined not to be compared with Sister Little Bai. Even if Dongqing Rushi calls me sister, she won't like me in her heart, and I won't like her either. But we will inevitably meet in the future. We will be by your side in the future. We can't pretend not to know each other for the rest of our lives. That would be too embarrassing." Wang Yuetong came over and hugged Li Tianlan, leaning in his arms and whispering. "In the future?" Li Tianlan said subconsciously and gently stroked her short hair with his palm. "Yes, in the future." Wang Yuetong nodded and said in a firm tone, "Tianlan, I'll resign. I'll stay by your side from now on." Li Tianlan paused for a while and then said, "Okay." Wang Yuetong laughed in his arms. She rubbed against Li Tianlan and whispered, "When you were sleeping, my dad called me. He wanted me to go home." "What did you say?" Li Tianlan was silent for a while and then asked slowly. "I said I won't go back." Wang Yuetong was in a daze. Thinking about the phone call, she said in a complicated tone, "So my dad asked me to go home." Li Tianlan held Wang Yuetong tightly and did not speak. "Go home. Go home." It seemed to have similar meanings, but the meaning was completely different. The former meant that she would not come back after going home. The latter meant that she would not go back again after going home. At least she would not go back before there was a clear result between Li Tianlan and the Wang family of Beihai. Li Tianlan lowered his head and kissed Wang Yuetong's hair gently. The former little princess trembled slightly in his arms. "Do you regret it?" Li Tianlan whispered. As long as you don't abandon me in the future, I won't regret it. Wang Yuetong's voice was very soft, almost like a whisper. After all, she was a woman who was so extravagant that she would rather gamble with her life. She would be perturbed, uneasy, confused, and at a loss for such a gamble. As for whether she would regret it or not, it all depended on the man she chose in the end. This responsibility was so heavy that it was clearer than that of the Li family, which was close at hand but far at the same time. Don't worry. Li Tianlan paused and then said, "Thank you." Wang Yuetong smiled, raised her head, and reached out to touch Li Tianlan's face. She whispered, "When I come back, I will not be the little princess of the Wang family of Beihai, but your woman." Li Tianlan patted her on the back and whispered, "When are you leaving?" "After dinner." Wang Yuetong whispered, "Take me to the airport." Li Tianlan nodded and said, "Okay. I want you to carry me downstairs." Wang Yuetong stepped back from Li Tianlan and opened her arms. Li Tianlan smiled, picked her up, and went downstairs. Everyone downstairs was there. Lin Yuxian and Yu Donglai sat at the dinner table. Dongqing Rushi was serving rice. The meal was very sumptuous. But because of the relationship between Dongqing Rushi and Wang Yuetong, the dinner was neither salty nor plain. Li Tianlan had a good appetite. For him, as long as the two women did not fight on the spot, there would be a relatively harmonious day in the future. After dinner, Li Tianlan drove Wang Yuetong to the airport. Wang Yuetong booked a ticket on the way and changed her boarding pass at the airport. Li Tianlan watched Wang Yuetong pass the security check. Wang Yuetong did not say much from beginning to end. She just hugged Li Tianlan hard before leaving and whispered, "Wait for me to come back." Her figure passed the security check and gradually disappeared at the end of the passage. Li Tianlan pulled his collar and turned to leave the airport. When the black Audi left along the road, a group of dignified and calm Mercedes-Benz cars slowly entered the airport and passed by Li Tianlan. The night rain was getting heavier and heavier, and the thunder was looming high in the sky. In the airport near midnight, two middle-aged men walked out of the airport steadily with a beautiful girl. 6 Mercedes-Benz cars were parked on the road outside the airport. Nearly 20 burly men in uniform black suits stood silently in the rain at night. The moment the 2 men and a woman walked out of the airport in silence, everyone bowed at the same time. "Welcome, Your Highness." The 2 middle-aged men got on the Mercedes-Benz at the front. The beautiful girl got on the other car. The motorcade slowly left the airport. In the Mercedes-Benz at the front, Gu Xingyun, who had arrived in Huiting one day earlier, looked pale and weak. He lowered the window, lit a cigarette, and coughed softly. Gu Qianquan, who had been with him all the time, received a text message. He took out his mobile phone and looked at it. The corner of his mouth twitched slightly, and he said calmly, "The cabinet and the office of the president have agreed on the rules of the maneuver of the 2 academies." As expected. Gu Xingyun smiled. This is all within the scope of the rules. Rules and rules are often different things, but sometimes they are the same thing. In the special warfare system, no matter what, Kunlun City has the final say. This is both a rule and a rule. What about the giant group? Gu Qianquan frowned and glanced at Gu Xingyun. Now he had confirmed Gu Xingyun's injury. Even Gu Xingyun was almost completely disabled by the blow of the murderous weapon, and his combat capability was greatly reduced. It was impossible for him to recover without a few years. Even if he had time, it would depend on his own luck. If the maneuver of the 2 academies had not been too important and related to the face of Kunlun City, Gu Xingyun would not have come in person. Now the power of Kunlun City was really in the hands of Gu Qianquan, and the relationship between him and Gu Xingyun seemed to have eased a lot. The maneuver of the 2 academies is a big event. No one can destroy it. Otherwise, it is really breaking and trampling on the rules. What else can Dongqing Wudi do unless he wants to commit political suicide? Gu Xingyun coughed and said in a flat tone, "I'm afraid that there will be an accident." Gu Qianquan said calmly, "How can the madman of the Dongqing clan be rational when he is crazy?" "That's true." Gu Xingyun nodded. "But the question is it worth it for Li Tianlan?" He glanced at Gu Qianquan and continued, "And even if there is an accident, you are there. If an accident really happens, you will personally kill Li Tianlan in the maneuver." He paused and said gloomily, "At any cost?" Gu Qianquan narrowed his eyes, nodded, and said, "Where are we going?" "The Sky Academy?" "To Winter Mountain." Gu Xingyun shook his head. "I have an appointment with an expert. Maybe he can give us some advice about the future situation." Gu Qianchuan nodded with a smile, but he curled his lips calmly. "What kind of so-called expert are you thinking?" "Bullshit. Isn't it your cheap father-in-law, Xianxia?" Chapter 352. When it was almost dawn, it finally turned into heavy rain after a whole day. The rolling thunder roared wantonly in the sky. It was windy in Huiting. The rain became heavier and heavier, and finally became a rainstorm that was extremely rare in Huiting. The rainstorm engulfed the whole city. In the dim lights, the crazy rain seemed to be the only sound in the whole city. In the pouring rain, a white-haired Xianxia, wearing a light blue Taoist robe, holding a horsetail whisk in one hand and an umbrella in the other, walked quietly on the road to the top of Mount Dong. Mount Dong was known as the back garden of the whole Huiting. There were many mansions and scenic spots, so the road was extremely smooth. However, it was a rainy day and it was late at night. The smooth mountain road was still slippery. Xianxia walked very slowly, but his footsteps were extremely firm. It was raining heavily. In a blue Taoist robe and a black umbrella, he walked alone in the dark night because of the heavy rain. His figure was like an inconspicuous black spot. There were many mansions on Mount Dong. However, Xianxia did not go to any mansion, but went straight to the top of the mountain. The mountain road looked more and more serene in the heavy rain. The top of the mountain looked distant and cold. Xianxia walked forward unhurriedly. He did not walk fast, but his pace was the same and never slowed down. The top of the mountain lit up with a vague and hazy light in the heavy rain. The light illuminated a small ancient and solemn building. Xianxuanzi's calm face looked a little weird in the night. He knew what the building was illuminated by the light. The building with a history of hundreds of years could be regarded as the holy land of the southeast coast for some people with faith. Xianxuanzi also had faith. But he believed in the three pure ones. And the top of the mountain. It was a church. The most famous Zhongshan Cathedral on the top of Mount Dong. The place illuminated by the light was the destination of Xianxuanzi's trip. Xianxuanzi walked closer and closer. The light swayed in the wind and rain, illuminating the bell tower of the church in the heavy rain. Xianxuanzi stood calmly in front of the church. The European-style church, the sage-like Taoist priest, the black umbrella in the rain, and the light on the bell tower. The rain poured down, and the wind blew past. In the darkness of the night, this scene looked strange yet harmonious. Xianxuanzi took a deep breath, pushed open the half-closed door, and walked in. He put the black umbrella at the door casually, and the water stain soaked the ground that had not been hit by the rain. The space inside the bell tower was very small. The cross was placed in the center of the bell tower. The lights in the bell tower were on, illuminating everything inside. Xianxuanzi entered the church and the bell tower. The white horsetail whisk hung in his hands, and his Taoist robe was neat and tidy. As he stood in the bell tower, the atmosphere became increasingly strange. But what was even stranger was that there wasn't a Taoist priest in this Catholic church. In front of the cross, there was even a monk dressed in a monk's robe. Bald head, Buddhist beads, monk robes, all these were even more conspicuous than Xianxuanzi's outfit. The two of them stared at each other across the cross. The scene was incongruous to the extreme. It's been 3 years, but the Heavenly King's demeanor is still the same as before. Congratulations. The monk looked at Xianxuanzi with a meaningful smile, without the tranquility and peace of a monk. Xianxuanzi suddenly raised his eyebrows. Heavenly King. That was how Xianxuanzi addressed him, not as a Taoist priest. In terms of seniority, he was of the same generation as Xianxuanzi's master. In this situation, although Buddhism and Taoism were different, Xianxuanzi deserved to be called martial uncle. But Xianxuanzi called him Heavenly King. He was indeed a Heavenly King now, the 13th Heavenly King of Samsara Palace that few people knew. Your master and I are of the same generation. Xianxuanzi narrowed his eyes and said indifferently. My master is gone, so you are no longer an elder. Is it wrong for me to call you Heavenly King? The monk's eyes were sharp, with clear aggression. Yes. Xianxuanzi was silent for a while before he said calmly, Are you Ruzhen or Rui? He knew that Great Master Wu Wei had 2 disciples, and he had even seen them more than once, but he had never seriously remembered their Buddhist names before. I'm Ruzhen. The monk put his palms together and saluted. Are you here tonight for revenge? Xianxuanzi's eyes were a little strange, with self-mockery. 3 years ago, I stabbed the horsetail whisk into Wu Wei's heart with my own hands. Are you here for this cause and effect? Heavenly King, you misunderstood me. Ruzhen insisted on calling Xianxuanzi with a smile, impeccable. Xianxuanzi smiled and looked at the rain through the window of the bell tower. The winter mountain under the rain was full of vitality. He narrowed his eyes and said softly, How do you know my contact information? I can contact the military counselor. Ruzhen said lightly, You are now the Heavenly King of Samsara. I can contact the military counselor, so I can find you. Xianxuanzi said casually, Who is the military counselor? Ruzhen was silent as expected and reasonable. Xianxuanzi said coldly, Since you don't believe me, why do you come to me? Heavenly King owes my Qingyun temple a cause and effect. Ruzhen's tone also became cold. 3 years ago, Xianxuanzi went to Qingyun temple to visit Great Master Wu Wei and directly stabbed the horsetail whisk in his hand into Great Master Wu Wei's heart. Great Master Wu Wei died to fulfill Li Tianlan's wish. But Xianxuanzi's original actions could be regarded as the cause of a series of events. In the end, you just want revenge, don't you? Xianxuanzi laughed sarcastically. If you want revenge, you can't live until now. Ruzhen said unceremoniously, I'm looking for you today just to ask you to return a cause and effect to Qingyun Temple. Just say it. Xianxuanzi said expressionlessly. Ruzhen hesitated and said calmly, Heavenly King, please extend a person's life. Who? Xianxuanzi asked. Qin Weibai. My little junior sister. Your current boss. Ruzhen told the truth. She will die. Xianxuanzi suddenly raised his voice. The reason why he joined the Samsara Palace was that Qin Weibai promised him that she would return his daughter's freedom when Kunlun City was destroyed. But now Qin Weibai was going to die? Xianxuanzi suddenly felt a little angry. He didn't know what he was angry about. If you are willing to help, she won't die. Ruzhen said calmly. Xianxuanzi was so angry that he laughed. He snorted heavily and said in a gloomy tone, I can't even see her destiny. Extend her life? How? Will you teach me? Ruzhen was silent. Facing Xianxuanzi's cold eyes, he slowly took out a Buddha bead. This bead is called death substitution. Ruzhen said calmly, with it, Heavenly King can help. Death substitution. In Lin An, Ruzhen also gave Qin Weibai a Buddha bead and told her that it was called death substitution. But there was no doubt that this one was the real death substitution bead. And the one he gave Qin Weibai was called mortal fate. Ruzhen didn't even need to speculate anything. He could be completely sure that at this time, the mortal fate was already with Li Tianlan. Qin Weibai thought that it was a chance to die for her. With how much she cherished and valued Li Tianlan, how could she be willing to use such a precious opportunity herself? She must give it to Li Tianlan. Only with Li Tianlan could Qin Weibai's mortal fate not be destroyed. In this way, he could extend Qin Weibai's life with a real death substitution bead. That was possible. Death substitution. Xianxuanzi muttered to himself, and his eyes narrowed. Is it the Buddha's relic of that senior? It's the Grandmaster's relic. Ruzhen nodded and handed the Buddha bead to Xianxuanzi. I didn't expect there to be such a thing. Xianxuanzi sighed with some disbelief, and then said with some doubt, if there was this thing, Wu Wei wouldn't have died at all. Why? Master said 3 years ago that he could live, but he had to die. There was finally a trace of sadness in Ruzhen's eyes. Great Master Wu Wei might be the only one who knew Qin Weibai's origin, and because of this, he could see the future. Before he left death substitution and mortal fate. He seemed to have arranged everything today quietly. He could not die because of the death substitution bead. He had to die. In addition to fulfilling Li Tianlan's wish, it was more to leave Qin Weibai the last glimmer of life. Another fool who actively seeks death. Xianxuanzi thought of Great Master Wu Wei and muttered to himself. Ruzhen didn't speak. Is it worth it? Xianxia asked, "Is it worth it for an adopted daughter who is not your biological daughter?" Ruzhen looked silent. "What is Qin Weibai's origin?" Xianxia looked at Ruzhen and said, "Wu Wei erased all traces for her. As for her origin, it was also well hidden. The Wang family of Beihai, Kunlun City, and Zhongzhou State have investigated, but they found nothing." "Do you know?" "She came from a small mountain village in the southwest." Xianxia said flatly, "When Master met my junior sister, I was there. That year, there was a blizzard in the southwest, and junior sister was lying in the snow. She looked to be about 6 or 7 years old, and her body was covered in blood. Both her internal and external injuries were fatal, but she was very conscious. When we discovered her, she also discovered us." He paused and said strangely, "She just looked at her. You couldn't imagine her injuries at that time. Her internal organs were all severely damaged, and it was as if someone had crushed her bones and torn her muscles. It was as if the person who wanted to kill her wanted to torture her in the cruelest way possible, and then casually threw her into the snow to freeze her to death. But she didn't have any fear or pain in that kind of injury and situation. When we found her, she just looked at us calmly, and it could even be said that she was examining us." He shook his head in disbelief. "Later, Master took my junior sister back and took good care of her for more than a year. Then she slowly got better. But you still tell me that she came from a small mountain village in the southwest?" Xianxia asked. "We did pick up my junior sister in a mountainous area in the southwest. I don't know her origin. Only Master and my junior sister know it." Ruzhen shook his head and said, "But it doesn't matter. You don't need to know this to prolong her life." "Prolong her life?" Xianxuanzi's tone was complicated. "What if I don't agree?" Ruzhen didn't answer this question, but said calmly, "This place is very important in the intelligence of Samsara Palace. It is said that several private priests are secret pawns of Kunlun City. It's a good place. It's surrounded by rich people. Maybe some secrets can be exposed when someone prays. Even if there are no secrets, it's a good place to build a stronghold here." Ruzhen looked at Xianxuanzi, whose expression changed a little, and said slowly, "I asked you to meet, and you asked me to wait for you here. I'm afraid you don't just want to see me, do you? I heard that Gu Xingyun came to Huiting with his daughter and Gu Qianchuan." Xianxuanzi's face was completely gloomy. "I won't do anything. If you don't agree, I won't leave. It's you who will have a hard time, and it has nothing to do with me. If you die, you'll pay back the karma." Ruzhen's smile was a little cold. "But the problem is, as the only metaphysics grandmaster left in Zhongzhou State, are you willing to die?" Xianxuanzi's lips trembled fiercely. Of course, he was unwilling to die. Not for the so-called status and reputation, but for his daughter and granddaughter. "Even if I'm willing to take action, it's too late today. There's not enough time." Xianxuanzi took a deep breath and clenched the death scapegoat bead in his hand. "Enough time," Ruzhen said calmly. "Just right." "Not enough time." Xianxuanzi was a little irritable. "The death scapegoat bead also needs someone to die for it. Where is the person? To die for Qin Weibai, it must be someone who has something to do with her. If the person is not here, then other arrangements are needed. There's not enough time." "There's no need for other arrangements," Ruzhen said softly. All of Xianxuanzi's words suddenly stopped. He looked straight at Ruzhen. Ruzhen laughed. "She's my little junior sister. I have something to do with her, right?" In Lin En, Qin Weibai asked him about his future plans. He said that everything was up to fate. Tonight, in the bell tower of this church, this was his fate. Xianxuanzi then understood why Ruzhen, who had been out of this world, was so unworldly tonight. Ruzhen slowly sat on the ground. "I have nothing to worry about," he said. "Come on. I want to serve my master as soon as possible." The storm outside the bell tower did not stop at all. A fire lit up in the bell tower. The fire flickered and flickered, flickering. Time passed slowly. The mountain road in the heavy rain in Winter Mountain lit up. A row of Mercedes cars passed through the heavy rain at night and slowly stopped in front of the church. Gu Xingyun got out of the car alone, looked up at the light of the bell tower, and turned to look at the girl who got out of another car. "You go up with me." Gu Xingyun glanced at the girl and said calmly. The light in the bell tower seemed to dim a little. Xianxia sat alone in the bell tower, and his face was a little pale. The death scapegoat bead in his hand had completely disappeared. Ruzhen. It also disappeared. Only some dust was floating in the air, and finally fell to the ground. It was blown away by the wind outside the window and disappeared. Xianxia, Wu Wei. In addition, Ruzhen, a real eminent monk, finally used a death scapegoat bead to exchange for a trace of Qin Weibai's earthly fate. Another fool. Xianxia whispered. There were footsteps outside the bell tower. The door of the attic was pushed open. Gu Xingyun's figure appeared at the door. Behind him was a girl who was about 20 years old. A picturesque young girl with a beauty that could topple cities. The girl was tall and slender, and her face was delicate and beautiful. She wore a light green dress, and her eyes were bright and beautiful. Her long hair fluttered in the wind, and every move she made was filled with the liveliness and charm of youth. She was very obedient and gentle. She stood there casually, but for a moment, she seemed to suppress the light. Vaguely, she had a kind of charm that could steal people's souls. Gu Xingyun stared at the girl, and the corners of his mouth were trembling. Unconsciously, his face was already covered with tears. Qing, this is Grandpa. Gu Xingyun looked at Xianxia and said calmly, "You're tuning in to the Wisdom Diary YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories."